Am I muted? Can y'all hear me? Because I've been having trouble with that lately. Is the right microphone selected? Hello, hello. Why am I wearing? Oh, I know why I'm wearing my reading glasses. I have notes. Hello. Hi. Welcome, everybody. There's so many of you here already. That's not the least bit intimidating. Oh, good. Everybody can hear me. Hi, Michelle. I totally just sent you an email, by the way. Hello and welcome. I have so many things to talk about with you all today. And because this is a tender subject for me and fairly terrifying to talk about publicly, I have notes, mostly to keep myself on track. I know everything's going to be fine because y'all are great. And I love this community. And this community has always been incredible. But I am also nervous because this is something that's so it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to talk spiritual path stuff. It kind of always has been. But welcome to those of you joining. This one's going to be a bit of a doozy. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to get settled in. Grab a beverage if you want. Grab snacks. Anything you want. Also, later on in the stream, for those of you who are super curious and know where I'm going with this talk and are really interested, it is going to be a very resource-heavy conversation later on. I'm going to be sharing a crap ton of resources because I have done a lot of vetting of those resources. Some of those things I have used and read. Some of them are still on my TBR, basically. But I will be sharing a ton. So if you are the type of person that wants to keep track of these kinds of things or might be interested in this subject, thanks, Stardust. If you're that way, as I know I am, you may want to bring something to write down things on. If this is already an area of interest for you, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, I'll frame it in a minute. But for those of you who do know, if you are going to want to collect those resources, please feel free. Yeah, Barb, truly do not try to do. I was just about to say, there's going to be no links. Because there's just too many things. It would be way too much to ask anybody to do. It was too much for me to try to prep. When I tell you half of my king size bed is currently covered in stuff, like when I say it's going to be resource heavy, it's going to be resource heavy because that's what I needed at the beginning of this journey. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to be jumping in and we're going to start with a couple of disclaimers and I think a bit of some acknowledgement. So for those of you who don't know, I have mentioned in passing here and there in little ways and slightly bigger ways as I've been tiptoeing my poor little feet into the conversation. I have been mentioning in passing, doing some deconstruction work, working with the Bible, and talking a little bit about that. But I've only just kind of dropped hints here and there. I have, since that started, received so many incredible comments, messages, emails. I have heard from people privately. I've heard from them within my context of my membership. There is definitely an interest in hearing me talk about this. And I think part of the reason there is an interest is because there's been very little in our community that I've ever seen of people willing to talk about diving into the more commonly referred to as Christian-centered type stuff, whether that is just getting into Mary stuff, whether that is getting into actual Bible study, whether that is working with Jesus, like any of that stuff. There's been very little of that I think has been positive, welcoming, or healthy for people. And I just say that because that was my perception as well. There's been a couple people who have sort of talked about this and have done it really beautifully and really gently. But we have also, in this community specifically, had at least a couple different people who started going down this particular path. And next thing you know, we're seeing testimonials and they're saying everything was evil and demonic. So that's been harmful. That has hurt people in this community. And so I wanted to, I guess, start off the conversation by, number one, saying there is not a shred of a possibility that that is where I'm headed with this, number one. Number two, I want to acknowledge that that's been harmful and scary and hurtful to people. And yes, Peggy's here. Specifically, we've seen it on a grander scale with somebody with Doreen Virtue and how the betrayal, the way that feels to go, all of these things that you said were so good and so healing and so healthy suddenly aren't because your path has shifted. And I don't buy into that. Number one, I think that if that's where you're headed, if that's where you end up, I believe truly that that's the path you were already in that space. So I want to acknowledge the harm that has been done to this community. And I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people have felt like they can't talk about this subject because of that. And I was definitely one of them. I have been so scared to inadvertently scare people or make them feel unwelcome or make them feel hurt or harmed by this topic. So number one, we're going to be talking about the Bible. We're going to be talking about Jesus. We're going to be talking about like Mary and Mary Magdalene and all of those kinds of things. And if this is the kind of thing that is personally triggering for you because of your past, I want to acknowledge, number one, I get it. I have my own religious trauma. I understand. I 100% stand with you in that. And this might not be the chat for you because we're going to be going down the rabbit hole. But I also wanted to acknowledge that I have always been very open and vulnerable on this channel. And I don't want that to change because I'm exploring different things that I haven't explored in this space before. And I found myself feeling like I couldn't talk about it. And that was nobody else. That was me in my head because I don't want to, like I said, cause any harm or make anybody feel unsafe or unwelcome. And I was really scared of assumptions people might make about all this. And I hope that by the end of this chat, if you've been nervous about this or curious about this, because I've dropped little things here and there, if it's been making you feel some kind of way, I hope that by the end of this, if you stick around for it because you're comfortable with it, I hope you'll understand by the end that what this has done for me so far, and it's still very new, is taken me deeper into my spiritual practices, not pushed me away from them. And one of the things I talked about with Peggy, like really early on in all of this, was we talked about the fact that, I mean, for me, my mainstay in my healing work, in my personal growth work, in my spiritual work has been tarot. Tarot has been the thing for me for 30 plus years. Well, 30, God, I'm making myself sound so old. This truly, though, it's been like since I was like 19, it's been tarot. And so tarot, the divine feminine, all these things have had such a major role to play for me that if I were to come up against something in any spiritual exploration that made me feel bad about the things that have been so beautiful and healthy and good for me, it would be the thing that made me feel bad about it that would go, not the thing that has served me for 30 years of my adult life. So I want you to know up front that we're not headed that direction. That's not where this is going. So thank you, Kali Countess, for acknowledging that. I definitely acknowledge this is going to be a little uncomfortable for some of you. And I really wanted to, like I said, if you need to bow out at any point, 100% get it. I also wanted to say, hold on, I have notes because I really wanted to make sure I say all the things I want to say. So yes, acknowledging it can be triggering, acknowledging this might not be the chat for you, totally. I also want to acknowledge that this space here will always and forever be inclusive. One of the things Peggy and I spent a lot of time talking about too is I'm like, there is no chance in hell that I will ever, I felt bad about using that term because I don't believe in hell, but we'll get there. There's no chance ever that I will be interested in any spiritual path that doesn't have room for everybody at the table. So from where I sit, the things that I'm exploring involves room for everybody at the table because that's the way I roll. I'm not interested in anything else. I lost family over being gay because of Christian ideology. So I have feels about this stuff and am kind of just as surprised as I'm sure anybody else is, that this is a path I ended up having any interest in exploring. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Something else to point out, and this is something else Peggy and I have talked about a lot. I'm going to say Peggy a lot because she and I have obviously talked about this a ton, but is that I have always, to some degree or another, when I go down a rabbit hole about something, some interest or curiosity, I always deep dive. I can be in it for years, just that one thing, because it's how I roll. So I can't tell you right now if this is a season, reason, or lifetime kind of deal. I have no idea. I know that right now it feels like home. And again, we'll talk about what that means and what that looks like. But I have no idea. Like I could like a year from now be like, hey guys, like legit. now I'm over here and I'm working with Hades. Like, I don't freaking know. I don't know. But this is where I'm at right now. And I didn't like the feeling of feeling like I was having to bite my tongue all the time because I just hadn't addressed it. And now, because we're going to talk about it, I'm hopefully not going to knock my shit over. Because we're going to talk about it. If in the future I mention something in passing and somebody has a question, I can be like, hey, go to this live stream where I got into all the nitty gritty about what I've been doing and how I think and how I feel and what this process has been looking like for me. But also because I don't know about y'all, but like if you have an interest in this, there's actually not a whole lot of easy to find resources for people who want to actively deconstruct. We're going to define that term. Don't worry. Deconstruct, reconstruct, make this path their own. There isn't a lot of that out there. And it kind of seems like what we're served instead is kind of this either or scenario where you're either all in and it gets really toxic and icky, or like you're all out and then there's like all this divisiveness around it. And I just kind of, I feel like I occupy the space between, and I don't know that there's a lot of that out there. So I just want to add my voice as somebody who, I feel like after 7-ish years on YouTube, y'all know what kind of person I am. I'd hope so by now. So yes, exactly what Peggy said. Most resources are either this is the only way or it's evil. And I just, there's in between space. I definitely am going to try to be watching comments, but as I said, I do have notes and we're going to cover a lot of ground today. So don't be afraid to tag me because it will highlight it for me. If you're a member, you can use the question emoji. If you all see a question that you really think I'm going to want to catch, please feel free to highlight it to me. And Peggy is keeping an eye on the chat in case we draw in anybody that is not a good fit for this chat. I tried to title the chat in a way so that we wouldn't draw in a bunch of random people who might come just to cause trouble, because that is definitely not what I'm about in this space, and that's never going to change. Last disclaimer, which I'm pretty sure you all know by now, but I don't do politics and I don't do social commentary in this space, in any of my online spaces. I do that stuff with friends and family and people where we can really get into the meat of it. I don't do that here because I feel like we need a space where we can have conversations that don't always go there. So please respect that and keep that in mind during the chat today, because I know right now things are crazy and there can be a lot of temptation to go down those pathways. I just don't want to see the chat devolve. I really want to be able to stay on topic. So many great comments. Thank you so much. And first of all, extra, triple, quadruple, quintuple, 1,000 times extra big thank you to my unicorn fam. I'm going to get emotional. I always do this. I didn't know I was going to make a public video. Actually, this was not the plan. Initially, I wasn't sure when or if or how I would ever bring this up here, but I ended up, it wasn't planned, but I ended up talking about this a bit in a channel update I did for my Badass Unicorns last Sunday. And some really incredible things came out of that conversation. Number one of which, it's clear that I want to talk about this. Like, I'm very excited about a lot of the things I've been discovering. And so I wanted to talk about it, number one. But number two, I was really scared about it. And my channel fan members really held me through that. And I really appreciated that. And I also learned that in my attempt to not make anybody uncomfortable by talking about it too much, I ended up dropping enough little bits that I think I may have created some anxiety for people, because I wasn't saying enough for people to really know what I meant or where I was going. And that was the opposite of my intent. I wanted to like reassure people. So yeah, that's my disclaimers. And so if you all see anybody hop into this chat midway who comes in and is like, WTF is going on, if you all can do me a big favor and just encourage them to watch the first 15 minutes of this chat so they can see and hear all of these disclaimers and kind of community mindfulness pieces that I wanted to address, I would really appreciate that, because I don't want somebody coming in and getting blindsided, basically. Now, with that said, I want to talk a little bit about my personal history with religion. When I growing up, I always had a belief in like a creator, in a inclusive, like loving kind of God. That's how I didn't get that from people around me necessarily. I don't know how I got that, but I got that on my own. I remember being in like junior high school and I literally read the Bible cover to cover. I read a 3rd grade version of the Bible, mind you, but I did read it. And I had this impression from my own explorations as a young person that God was this like very loving, very enveloping, very warm, very comforting energy, as was Jesus. So I always had this really like benevolent, comfy, cozy, holistic relationship. And so I felt like I had it figured out, like I was good. And unfortunately, I did have a very close member of my family, my bio dad, who is quite religious. And I say that because I think the distinction between religion and spirituality is there's a broad difference between those two things. I feel like I grew up very spiritual, but my dad was religious, and he was kind of deadbeat dad, like kind of mostly out of the picture. But ultimately, I lost him because I was gay. That wasn't the only reason. But coming out of the closet definitely shows you quite quickly what religion can look like from people in your life who are religious. I'm going to say religion a lot because clearly I'm uncomfortable with religion. But so I had people around me that had these more rigid exclusionary views about God and Jesus, and that created a lot of disillusionment for me. I had this, what I felt like was like a really close relationship with deity and with um, Jesus, who I guess I would have seen kind of almost like a spirit guide, I guess back then. That's the best language I know how to use. And to be honest, I know it probably hits when I talk about my dad, but like honestly, the biggest impact was my high school best friend who was very religious and who was also gay. We came out to each other at the same time, like literally on the same day in the same phone call. Like it was like I was like, I've got something to tell you, and he's like, I've got something to tell you too. And we both came out, and where I struggled with him, and again, some of these we'll be over this part pretty short because I feel like this is a part that can be pretty intense for people. But anyways, he told me that day, not that very day that we came out, but like he told me one day shortly after. Peggy's talking about my dad, not my not my ex-best friend, or not my high school best friend, sorry. Anyways, so I remember the one time he told me on the phone, and I was like trying to explain to him, I'm like, because he said he was going to hell. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was so confused. I'm like, what? And he's like, no, I'm not going to change. Like, I know this is who I am and this is how I'm made and I can't change that. Like, I'm definitely gay, but like, also I'm going to hell. Like, I recognize it's a sin. And I'm like, how can you have faith in a creator, in a God who, and you acknowledge this is like who you are. This isn't something you like chose in your life. You know what I mean? Like you're able to acknowledge this is who I am, but also say, I'm going to hell. Like I could not, I was so angry. I've never been angrier at anything or anyone in my entire life. And like my bio dad was like the icing on the cake. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't that close with my bio dad. It hurt, but it wasn't like he'd always rejected me in one form or another. Like it wasn't, rejection from him wasn't new, but this rejection of self by my best friend was horrific to me. It was unfathomable. And I was furious. And I was like, if that's who the hell you are, like not him, God, then I have no interest. And like, I was done. I was like, that's not the relationship I had. And if that's, and the difference here, I think that's important to point out is I didn't feel personally rejected by God. It was the opposite. But I thought I was wrong about God. I was like, okay. So again, I know I'm using a lot of God talk. I apologize, but I'm trying to be clear about feelings and thoughts. So regardless, I broke up with everything. I was like, no, this is not what I believe. This doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't track. It doesn't work. Thank you, Faye. So yeah, I didn't know what to do besides to run in the exact opposite direction. And I'm so freaking glad I did. I have to say, I have zero regrets. I know some people come back to, they might take a long journey away from God or Jesus or those archetypes and then come back to it and feel like they like feel guilty. And I had a moment of that, I'm not going to lie, because I feel like I let other people tell me who God was and didn't just trust myself. You know what I mean? It that made me feel some kind of way. But if I'm being really honest, I have no regrets. For so many reasons. I literally wrote this down so I wouldn't forget what I was going to say. Oh yeah. I had so much healing to do. Number one, I needed to find the divine feminine, which is never going in. Oop, my internet did a thing. I had to find the divine feminine. That was huge for me, is huge for me, and remains huge for me. The divine feminine is a huge part of my spiritual path and will always be. And for me, exploring the divine feminine, finding the goddess, like working with the goddess, working with divine feminine archetypes, finding love and the divine within the feminine was not only something that I needed for myself, but was also super healing and has helped me do so much work around my mother wounds. There's like a lot of stuff there. Some of you know more about my background than others, but I definitely had I didn't have great parents. I'm just going to leave it there. I had a lot of mother wounding. I had a lot of issues there, and doing so much work around the divine feminine has done so much for me. And again, it will always remain a part of my practice. That's going nowhere. But anyways, that's basically the bottom line, is essentially that what caused the breakup for me was other people telling me who God was, and me going, oh, well, then I must be wrong. I must have been wrong about God. And these people who are so passionate about it must be right. And if that's who God is, I want nothing to do with that entity. I want zero to do with it. But the sad thing about that all, I guess, is that I've never not believed in creation. I've never not believed in something. And logically in my brain, I've always been like, well, I just don't believe in something out of nothing. I feel like there's always something, there's always something. Thank you so much. These are my old glasses too. I have notes, and I was like, well, if I don't put my glasses on, it's going to get blurry, and that's going to be a problem. So how did this whole thing start? So it started, I want to say like last spring. I think it was like July at the latest last year. So again, very new still. And I couldn't tell you what triggered it. I think I have a few thoughts. I have a few ideas of what might have triggered it. Number one, I think I was triggered a little bit by, I think there was a couple seeds planted quite some time ago. One is reading Mary Magdalene Revealed, which was such a beautiful experience for me. And I read that back. I wrote it down. I read it in I think I read Mary Magdalene Revealed in 2021. And I also had kind of reconnected with Aslan from the Chronicles of Narnia as a figure that I feel like so beautifully represented or made a really wonderful archetype for the kind of spiritual guide that I align really, really well with. So I was kind of drawn back to Aslan. I'd actually picked up a book. Oh, it's not in my pile. It's all the way over there. There's basically like a devotional type thing, but it's Aslan. It's like A Year with Aslan or something. I can grab it if anybody's curious, but it has just like little quotes from the books, Chronicles of Narnia, which I loved growing up and had no idea. Oh my God. I was so mad when I found out. Okay. Shortly after I broke up with Christianity initially, right? I had always been a huge fan of the Chronicles of Narnia. I had discovered them on my own. It wasn't like my dad showing them to me or anything like that. Nobody else. And I read them over and over and over again. Like I still know them by heart, basically. I know them really, really well. I loved those stories, was obsessed. And it was only after I broke up with religion that I found out that there was a lot of allegory. And then I was mad, and then I wouldn't read the books. I didn't read the books for like 20, 25 years. And then I kind of pulled them back in again. I was like, I miss these stories. These are so beautiful. Like, why should I let religion ruin it or whatever? Anyway, so I kind of rediscovered that. You'll actually find, if you want to really go digging, you'll find in my chat I had with Kellyanne Maddox in 2021, I mentioned having found that book, that Aslan book. And I mentioned it to her because she had mentioned something about working with Aslan. And I was like, that's really cool. Me too. Like, blah, blah, blah. And I told her about the book. So those are the things that I think give little hints that like this was starting to kind of bring itself back into my consciousness a little bit. But to date, I cannot remember. I tried to for my notes, if I could remember what sparked this whole thing. But I know that it started out as just having an interest in like Bible study. Like I want to read the Bible. I want to read it. Like now that I'm like 48 years old and I like know what my spiritual beliefs are and I'm grounded, I was like, yeah, actually, I think I want to dig into this. And I was terrified of just the interest. I was like, oh God, what does that mean? Oh, ew, why do I want to do this? Like, it was like this very conflicted thing, but it also felt very exciting and very new and different. But I was so scared to expose myself to a bunch of exclusionary, rigid, dogmatic bullshit, if I'm being completely honest. Like, that's the blunt version. I was like, oh my God. And I've had interest in like the Apocrypha and the Pseudepigrapha for a bit. I've had interest in reading that stuff. But somehow or other, I found out that there was a new translation of the Bible that had come out in the last couple of years called the New Revised Standard Version, Updated Edition. And somehow I found out that it was making some of the people who are super dogmatic in their beliefs real mad. And I was like, huh, that might be the version I want to check out. There's a lot of the NRSV UE is an edition of the Bible that is, the NRSV edition, period. And we can go down the translation rabbit hole in a little bit. But that particular edition is the one most commonly used in like religious studies courses. It's considered the most as I understand it, don't quote me on this, one of the most scholarly translations of the Bible. And I was like, okay. And I found out some of the changes that the translation team had made to the text based on a better understanding of how to best translate the text. I found out that some of the wordings that have been harmful or uncomfortable for me in the past have been updated because of a deeper understanding of the text. Artie, if you want to link somebody to the live, just go up. If you're on a computer, you can just click at the top and like the address, the URL, and just share that. If you're on a phone or something, you can click the share button and there'll be an option to copy link and you can just do that. I'm sure there's a lot of great comments, y'all. So don't forget, please highlight. I haven't been really looking at them. Let me pause. We'll talk more about the NRSV in a second, but I just want to check in with everybody, make sure everybody's doing okay. We're good. Nobody's flipping out. Yay. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me out. Yeah, there's some really interesting things about the feminine being minimized at best. Yeah, super, super cool. Okay, so thank you, Barb. I have not read the NASV because the NASV, as I understand it, is older. Well, okay, the NRSV UE is very new. That translation, in fact, I'll pull out my first copy because this is the first copy I picked up. This one, which has no notes or anything in it, I want to say the date on this. It's like, I want to say it's like 2022 or something. Like this translation is really, is there not a date? Hello? Where's the copyright info? Isn't there copyright info on Bibles? There must be. Here it is. Yeah, 2022, published by Zondervan. So 2022 was the first version of this edition. And for clarity, I'm going to tell you a couple of the things that made people real mad. And I love it. If I can remember them, we'll see. But like the first one is, we all know that the first few words, well, I shouldn't say we all know. Those of us exposed to religious stuff know that in the beginning is literally the first 3 words of the Bible. Except that's not technically a correct translation. I'm going to make so many people mad with all this. It's when God began to create the heavens and the earth. It's not really in the beginning. That was in how do I word this? It was like a paraphrase kind of by the people initially doing some of the older translations. And the interesting thing, that seems like such a tiny thing, but it's actually not, if you think about it. Number one, it is not technically the correct translation for starters. And it assumes that, and I'm down the rabbit hole. I have so many more notes to talk about. But anyways, it assumes that there was nothing and then there was something. But when you read the text more critically, you understand that there was something. And then there was a sort of, to me, I feel like it more accurately describes the Big Bang. But again, that's a whole other side tangent. Yes, it's more gender inclusive. There's definitely more of like where man was used. I think it's like people or humankind or something like that. There's more of an understanding that like the way words are used does matter and has an impact. There's a translation error that created a lot of homophobia that got corrected in this edition. So that's amazing. They've been more careful and cautious with the clobber passages, something that we can talk about at some point, to translate them in a more accurate way without inserting dogma. Barb, swear to God, you're not going to be able to keep up with links. Please don't do that to yourself. Anybody can Google this stuff. It's fine. And don't go buying anything yet, y'all, because I got all kinds of stuff to show. But anyways, so I don't know exactly where it started, but initially I was coming at it from a scholarly perspective. I was like, I kind of just want to know, like, how I would read it if I look at it as like a mythology, or if I've never believed that the Bible is word for word literal. That's never made sense to me. That still doesn't make sense to me. There's no scholarly basis for that in my opinion. And I've done a ton of research since I started this, so I feel pretty confident saying there's no scholarly basis for this to be fully literal. There are parts that I think are intended to be more literal. But there have been so many mind-blowing aha moments for me through this, that stuff that I was never told by people who were in religion. There is so many fascinating things I've discovered. Everything down from, it all started in Genesis, like everything from Genesis tells 2 creation stories. It's not one story, it's 2 that has been somehow weirdly strung together. And nobody ever talks about the fact that they're 2 completely different stories of creation. So many really interesting things. But anyway, what I started to realize as I went through this study and got deeper and deeper into it is I started to realize that everything I already believed, my spiritual beliefs from when I was young, had a basis in the Bible. But that's not the take of people that are dogmatic. That wasn't the take of people that around my life that were religious or rigid or exclusionary or conditional or transactional in their thinking about faith in God. Those things were not ever talked about. And I was never exposed to people who were like cool with you asking questions and like wrestling with the text, which is hilarious because the entire freaking point of the Bible through half of it is that you're intended to wrestle with the text. It's baked in. There's a story in the first couple of books of the Bible about a major character in the Bible essentially being rewarded because he was willing to wrestle with the text. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps because that stuff just gets me fired up. I was not mad, but frustrated that so much went under not noticed, I guess, about the text. And when you read it or you're exposed to it when you're young, I don't think you're not, unless you're really lucky and you're surrounded by some really open-minded people, you're not going to have those kinds of conversations with anybody. It's not going to even occur to anybody to discuss it. And it's wild to me. It's wild to me. But anyway, so I went in with a scholarly interest. And as I was starting to go through and gather resources and like listen to podcasts and read books and look up content creators on YouTube. We're going to talk about how I vetted those people and how I decided what to read. And we're going to go down there in a minute. But when I started to do all of that, I started to recognize that, wait, there's like a solid foundational basis for my spiritual worldview in this text, which I would have never seen coming in a million years. So many good things coming up in the chat, y'all, for real. Yeah, if your priest gets mad at you for asking questions, like I have opinions about that. I think that's like, especially when you recognize that there are contradictions left in the Bible on purpose. They're there on purpose. Like nobody's going to spend 300 years between chunks of text and still put both of those things in there knowing there's a contradiction unless it's intentional. It is riddled with it. It is riddled with it. And other faiths in the Jewish faith, as I understand it, having listened to several Jewish podcasters and such, it's not only intentional, but it is encouraged to question and debate what the text means. That's the whole freaking point. And half of the New Testament is spent with Jesus specifically speaking in myth and story on purpose and saying he knows not everybody's going to understand it, and that's okay. Like different people will get different things from it, and that's all right. Like it's in there. Anyways, wait, Trish says I sense this coming since you started the Thoth journey. How interesting, because I didn't. This is like when you come out of the closet and people are like, yeah, we always knew you were gay. And I'm like, well, could you have freaking told me? That would have been great. That would have been great. I would have loved the heads up. But anyways, so it did start out completely scholarly. And as I got in, I started to find things and I just started to feel more and more like, wait, there's something here for me. And I didn't think there was. So that was really interesting. I was really excited to see if I could find a basis for God's character. If I could find the divine feminine, I started that in the very beginning. I was like, I want to see the divine feminine from Genesis 1. And I did find her in Genesis 1, which is amazing. But so there's a lot of side questing for me. There's a lot of like, whatever. But anyways, I wanted to share some language that I learned that helped. So in the pagan community, we often hear the term UPG or unverified. There it is. Thank God I wrote it down. Unverified personal gnosis. So gnosis means knowledge. It's like something we know. And so UPG is a way in the pagan community we have of sort of describing that there is like sort of verifiable information. And then there's what you know as a result of, how did I write this down? Let's see, spiritual knowledge gained from personal experience, intuition, or direct revelation, not from text slash tradition. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's why the Talmud is printed the way it is. The outermost box is for your own interpretation. More on that in a second, because that's what I've been doing. It's been great. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. I will actually show you the inside of my study Bible and stuff for those of you who are curious, but remind me when I get there. I have my camera set up so I can. So anyways, UPG or unverified personal gnosis is sort of the knowledge you gain through spiritual means, spiritual understandings that you can gain from your own intuition, your own gut, like what feels true for you. And that has so much validity but it is not the exact same thing as hermeneutics, which is what we're going to also talk about. So hermeneutics is a term I was exposed to when I started going down this rabbit hole. It's commonly used among Bible scholars. And hermeneutics is the theory or method of interpreting sacred text, like the Bible, based on studying that text, context, culture, language, and symbolism. And the way I like to think of hermeneutics is hermeneutics are like the lenses, like the glasses you wear when you read the Bible. So it's like you're intentional what you're bringing to it. It's like you're going to read it through a particular understanding based on looking at the surrounding context of the culture, the time, taking those things into consideration instead of going, this will always mean exactly the same thing to everybody, despite the fact that this is hundreds and hundreds of years old, which I think is nonsensical, if I'm being completely honest. And I don't say any of that to put anybody else's beliefs down, to be clear. However you want to come to your spiritual path or your religion or however you want to do it, 100% down for anything anybody else wants to do. I have thousands. Thanks, babe. Yeah. And by the way, can I just say, I have had the most incredible conversations with Peggy about all of this. And it's been neat for me because, like I said, I read the Bible when I was much younger and I read the 3rd grade version of it. And then I avidly avoided it for like 30 years. And somehow Peggy has just a brain for this stuff, which you probably know. She has a brain for holding on to she calls it trivia, but like bits of information. And so I'm like, oh my God, babe, I just read this story about like this character and this character. And she's like, oh yeah, that's when so-and-so does so-and-so. And I'm like, how do you know that? I've never seen you read a Bible in your whole fucking life, but she has read it. And so she like holds on to this like information. And it's been so fun and stimulating to talk about it with her. But anyway, okay. So now that I've talked about unverified personal gnosis and hermeneutics, these are things that I think are helpful when you're coming at something like this. At least it was helpful for me. And the reason I named this chat, by the way, Charting My Spiritual Path, is because while I'm feeling very, very welcomed and held in this path I'm exploring right now, it's something I'm still very much carving out for myself. I am not coming to anything fixed in any way, shape, or form. This is very much like clay. It is being molded. And in fact, that brings me to an analogy I want to share with you that I came up with when I was trying to explain to Danny, Dawn, Peggy, and people in my life that what I was doing with all this. And so the best way I know how to describe it is this. When I was exposed to Christianity as a concept, as a religion, it was kind of like, or God, or however you want to see it. It was like I was living in the house I grew up in. Like I was exposed to it and it felt solid. Like the foundation felt good. The structure itself felt good. But the stuff in the house was not my stuff. Samson. Yeah, we do need, yeah. Peggy's like so into some of this shit. It's amazing. Okay, sorry. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I'm living in a house that like the house is good. The house is solid, but it's stuffed full of everybody else's stuff. It's like my parents picked the furniture and the decor and somebody else gave us the dishes and that's grandma's lamp in the corner. And like none of that stuff was mine, but like the house is fine. It's just that it was full of everybody else's stuff. And so what this process has been like for me is emptying out the house of everybody else's stuff slowly. It's not, you can't do it immediately. It's like you slowly get all the stuff moved out. So I'm slowly purging the house of all the other people's stuff. And then I am mindfully and with so much intentionality bringing in a piece of furniture, bringing in another piece of furniture, bringing in a rug, painting the walls. Like I'm starting to make this house my house. And so this is the best way I know how to describe what deconstruction and reconstruction is. So for me, deconstruction is emptying the house. Now, you might not empty everything. You might decide that grandma's lamp is actually real great in the corner. And actually, you kind of really like grandma's lamp. And it's always kind of felt a little bit like your lamp too. So like grandma's lamp can stay. But like maybe the dishes that your like Auntie Ethel gave you, that can go. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's like, oh, I never liked those dishes. Ew, those can go. You know what I mean? And so when we think of deconstruction, it's removing all the other stuff that doesn't belong there. That's not yours. It doesn't feel like yours. It's never felt like yours. It can go. And reconstruction is bringing in those things that you feel resonate with you that are like, this is mine. Like I have always wanted orange freaking walls in my living room. I would never want orange walls in my living room, babe. Don't take that seriously. But I come home and there's orange walls. No, but it's like that. It's like giving yourself permission to decorate your house your freaking way. How come I can't see Dawn? Everybody's saying hello to Dawn, and I don't see her. Oh, there she is. Hi. Hi, Dusty. Thanks for stopping in. So the house analogy is so powerful for me because it gave me permission to recognize that, like, I don't have to live in a house that somebody else freaking decorated. I can decorate my own damn house. Thank you very much. And I can trust myself to do that. Like you can see in the background, I have like a unicorn and a goddess. Like it's all good. This is my freaking house. She did not block me. That's mean. Anyway, I'm hyper. I'm going to have to settle down. Mostly because I've been real nervous for this chat and y'all are being freaking amazing. So let me just pause and say thank you. You all are awesome. And gentle reminder, totally cool. I didn't block you. Oh my God. Totally cool if anybody has to bail. I totally get it. This is a lot. This is a big chat. But the replay will be available. All the resources we're gonna go through it. Okay, so look, I made it to page 2 of my notes. I'm so proud of myself. Okay. So I'm gonna list off a few of the things I've been deconstructing, which I think will be there's never bestie blocking. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm gonna list a few of the things that I have specifically been deconstructing. And these are not easy things to deconstruct, but they are things I put a lot of time and energy into. And really, I started with deconstructing. The only thing I was interested in was deconstructing. It's like, I kind of came to the Bible almost mad. I'm like, I'm going to prove that there's no freaking hell. There's no Satan. I had an agenda. I'm not going to lie. But I wanted to pursue it in a scholarly way, in an intentional way. Don't worry. The page 2 is the doozy. We're gonna pause and talk about resources, and that's gonna be like an hour at least. So, but anyways, okay. So I started with the obvious, my own personal experience. I started with queerness and exclusion. I needed to go right to those clobber passages, which if you don't know the clobber passages, there's a passage in Leviticus about you shall not, like a man shall not lie with another man like a woman. It's an abomination. There's some stuff in the letters of the New Testament. I wanted to go into those and be like, so what's the actual deal with these? Because these are used, they're called clobber passages because they're used to hurt queer people. Let's be real. They're used to hurt queer people. They're used to create exclusion. They're used to they've been misinterpreted, I think. I don't think it's always intentionally malicious, but I definitely think that they have been misunderstood and misused a lot over the years. So I spent a lot of time deconstructing queerness and exclusion in the Bible in general, and have come to some very interesting conclusions that I have a very solid scholarly basis. And again, I'm going to share all of my resources for this for anybody who wants to look any of this stuff up for yourself or dig into any of this for yourself for your own purposes. Deconstructing the clobber passages is, I think, a useful thing to do if you have found yourself surrounded by people in your life who like to pull those out of their ass to be shits. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a useful endeavor. And I will talk. Oh, I forgot to write down the one. I don't have a pen near me. I'll just tell you now. One of the ones that was really helpful to me was a documentary that is now available, I believe, on Amazon Prime. At the time that I found out about it last summer or last fall, it was only available. You had to pay to stream it. I literally paid to stream it. I was like, I need to watch this. I don't think I made Peggy watch it with me. I don't think I did, but it's called 1946, the mistranslation that changed the world or something. Let's see. Hold on. 1946, the mistranslation that shifted culture is what it's called. I will give you a link if I can figure it out. Here's here's the link to their website. 1946, the movie. You can now watch it on Amazon Prime, I'm pretty sure. It was painful. It was painful because those things have been used. They were things that created so much disillusionment for me with my spirituality, but also the things that I feel like emboldened people to be shitty. So 1946 is a really great documentary and was really great to watch. I have a whole lot of other resources I'm going to share with you around deconstruction that will hopefully help. But that was obviously that was going to be one of my number ones, because if I couldn't reconcile that, the rest of it didn't matter to me at the end of the day. That was the main thing. That was my initial breaking point, right? So that was where I began. And then as I started to realize that actually the message in the Bible, when you get to the heart of it and the overarching story, for me, based on my hermeneutics and my UPG, I guess you could say, probably Jules. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the exact thing, but yeah, basically understanding where text may have been misunderstood, and how it takes very little to carry through a translation error or a translation decision through many, many translations because of how translations come about, which we'll talk about a little bit. But anyway, so I started there, and then I spent a lot of time on divination and magic. I've spent a lot of time on original sin. I've spent a lot of time deconstructing hell and deconstructing Satan and the devil. The crucifixion is newer for me, but I've been working a lot on that the past several months specifically around theories of atonement. We'll talk about that too. But I didn't buy the whole we're all bad from beginning and like therefore need to all like and God's like, hey dude, I need a sacrificial lamb. So can you just like off this guy for me? He's my son, but can you off him? And then I'll forgive you all. Like that made no sense to me. Like it's never made sense to me. And it's actually only one theory of what the cross and the crucifixion means. But again, I don't want to get too into details unless people really want to go down a rabbit hole, and then we can. But I've been spending a lot of time deconstructing the crucifixion, looking at different ways of interpreting that particular story. And then also the idea of conditional salvation in the first place. The idea that you have to like do specific things, meet specific criteria, say certain things, or have certain rituals in order to like be accepted into heaven, God, whatever, however you want to see that. I have concept. I've also been deconstructing heaven, which is a little harder to try to describe. But for me, my basic spiritual beliefs have remained the same, right? So I still think that I still believe in reincarnation. I still believe that we return to some sort of source energy. And I think that's probably a little bit like what heaven is supposed to be, is that source place. But like, I think the idea that like you have to meet certain criteria or you just get to go be tortured forever and ever and ever forever did not make a lot of sense to me. But I wanted to know, was there actually a scholarly basis for that opinion? Or is this just me trying to force or pigeonhole my beliefs into this framework? And so I tried to go into it going, is this even possible to deconstruct these things, to actually believe in the God that I believed in when I was young? And also all of this, like, is that possible? Some things I've been reconstructing is, I think, also helpful. Some things I've been reconstructing. God as genderless, which ironically is not that uncommon of a belief, especially when you get into other Abrahamic cultures or Abrahamic belief systems. But I'm reconstructing God for myself as a genderless sort of idea, more of a yin yang style of energy. And there's some interesting things about that I've been side questing on around. There's a really cool thing. There's a book here in my stacks that I will share with you that is quite dense, and I'm only like this much into it. But in the first few pages, it's a very, very scholar dense book. But in the first few pages, one of the things that came up is one of the names for God in the Bible is El Shaddai. And one of the ways to translate that is, oh gosh, I wrote this down so I would get it right. Because I always say God with breasts, but that's not quite right. It's breasted God. And so one of the things I did from early on in the text is whenever I see El Shaddai show up, and sometimes when you read the actual text, it'll say God Almighty. And then if you look in the subnotes, you'll see that is God Almighty is referring to El Shaddai. It's very interesting to me because I've been noting whenever that shows up. And interestingly, whenever El Shaddai shows up, there's often some sort of a motherly quality to what is being said in the text, which I find very fascinating. Things like you'll see passages where there'll be a blessing being given, and it'll be like by one name for God. I can't remember which one, but we'll say by another name for God. Like may you be protected and strong and whatever. And then by El Shaddai, by Lord Almighty, may you be fruitful and have many children. How interesting that the fertility piece is often associated to El Shaddai. Sorry, yes, I can spell that out. Sorry. El Shaddai. So that is one thing that I've been reconstructing, is finding out that there is a very feminine quality that shows up in the many names of God, number one, that come up in the Bible. There's some interesting things around naming. When Jacob is named Israel, which is, again, there's whole stories here. I might be actually mixing this up. I'm trying to think. There's the Jacob's Ladder moment. There's a few moments, but there's moments where people get names that is El Shaddai or Lord Almighty or God Almighty that shows up. Things that I would associate with mother. There's also many passages in the Bible that say things that God is like a mother brooding over her hens and all of this kind of stuff. So when you are looking for it, at least when I've been looking for it, I've been starting to see that there is a both masculine quality to God and a feminine quality to God, which is very, very interesting and is more in alignment with sort of how I perceive this creatrix kind of energy. So other things I've been reconstructing in general are the divine feminine in the Bible, which this is not new. A lot of people have done this work, but we've got Asherah, which was new to me. I didn't know about Asherah before this. I'd never heard of her. And reading about Asherah is in some cases called the Hebrew goddess. There's so many other things around that. I love that y'all are sharing your resources too. Thank you so much for that. There's Lilith, there's Sophia, or wisdom, which the entire book of Proverbs literally sounds like it's talking about a goddess. I didn't know that. Didn't realize that. That's the whole thing. Of course, Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene are both really strong influences in the Bible for divine feminine attributes. And again, I'm not new to this. A lot of people have done this work, including in our community, who work with Mary or work with Mary Magdalene or work with Lilith or work with the Sophia or whatnot. So that's one of the things I'm reconstructing. A big thing I've been reconstructing, and this kind of goes along with the deconstruction of original sin and the fall, is reconstructing the Adam and Eve story for myself based on my own understanding. And this was stuff that came up when I was actively studying these sections of the Bible, but realizing that the story sounded to me very much like a metaphor for incarnation, for the choice to incarnate. And I'll summarize it quickly so that you kind of know where I'm coming from. But the story is about a choice to eat from the knowledge, the fruit of the knowledge, the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? And then God gives Adam and Eve skins and sends them out into the world. Well, I don't know about you, but like when you really break it down to its basic storyline points, to me, that sounds like an intentional choice to choose the knowledge of both happiness, joy, and suffering that incarnating into a physical body on earth kind of sounds like to me, and being given skins and being told like, hey, you screwed up, bro. You could have stayed here forever and been super cozy. Yeah, but then I wouldn't have grown or had any personal development or had a life, you know? So I could have stayed safe in my little God bubble, sure. But like, I think I want to experience the world. And I think that the snake showing up is possibly Lilith. And I think that a lot of that is about the idea of the sort of God figure in the story being like, no, stay safe, I'll protect you. And the feminine in the story being like, actually, though, you kind of need to get the hell out of the nest and experience things and experience life. And so I feel like that push-pull between those two just makes so much sense to me. So yeah, that's one of the things I've been reconstructing is that story and what it means and its implications. And again, I feel like I'm throwing a lot at you. This is a very dense talk, but I'm going to open it up and start chatting resources and take questions and all that stuff too. But I wanted to get the meat of it out. I've also been reconstructing divine love. Divine love is unconditional and non-transactional. Therefore, the force of God, Christ, Jesus, etc., however you want to see any of that stuff, to me, if the foundation is not love or loving, it is no longer aligned with that energy for me. To me, this is the simplest thing in the world. It is so simple. It is so simple. And also universal salvation. Yeah, that's a given. Worthiness is inherent. These are things that I feel like is in the text. And I don't know why it's constantly overlooked. I have a lot of feelings about that. But like when you get into the text and you realize that the message over and over and over and over again is you're good enough. Like, you're mine. Like there's this feeling of like, you're already accepted. You're already part of the team. Like it's good. You're good. Everybody's good. Doesn't matter if you read this or you follow this or whatever. Everybody's good. We're good. We're fine. Not as in we're all good people. Obviously there are bad people in the world. Not saying there's not. But this idea of inherent worthiness, of inherent acceptance, I think those things are unquestionable. Ooh, interesting. I mentioned his dark materials in the other live stream, and that series absolutely reconstructed the concept of Eve and the serpent for me. I'm going to have to read them again. Diana, the NRSV UE came out in 2022, so it's really quite new. But it is an updated edition of the NRSV, which was previously, I would say, the most accepted scholarly translation. But the updated edition really pushed itself, I think, to be as accurate to the context and update it for the current time in a way that doesn't change the text, but clarifies the text. That's the best way I know how to express it. Okay, and we'll talk again. We will talk translation philosophies and translation here in a bit. But yes, I totally agree, Stardust, 100%. I've also reconstructed in my house. There's room for mysteries. There are Nephilim. There's the books of Enoch, which will blow your freaking mind. There is aliens and ziggurats and so many things I could talk about with you. But I have room in my personal understanding to leave room for life on other planets and for mysteries of the world. And there's so much cool overlap if you're looking for that stuff in the Bible that's kind of cool. Peggy and I had the most incredible conversation about ziggurats and all of that stuff. We're going to talk about hell because I've been deconstructing hell. And I will tell you guys right now, if you go to a site, let me see, there's a chart. Let me see if I can pull it up. This was very eye-opening for me when I found it. Here we go. This is what we want. Okay. I'm going to see if I can just share a link to the image. Open image, a new tab. This should work. Okay. And there's some interesting thing. I don't know how perfectly accurate this is. I'm pulling it off the first website I found. But if you look at the number of times hell is in a translation of the Bible, you will see some shocking numbers. Namely that the authorized King James Version, which a lot of modern religious people use, either the KJV or the New King James Version, hell is mentioned a total of 54 times. Just to summarize for those of you who don't want to click the link. In the New Revised Version, 12. In the New Revised Standard Version, 12. The entire thing, by the way, the entire Bible, 12 times. In the New Living Translation, 13, 12. New American Bible Revised Edition, which is the NABRE Roman Catholic, 0. Yeah, 0. Now, the NRSV UE isn't here. But when you start to dig into this, you realize that the word often translated as hell is Sheol in Hebrew, which is another term for grave. Could be underworld, could be lots of things. It's not hell. And in the New Testament is often Gehenna, which is a real, actual place. Gehenna is an actual valley in that area of the world, in the ancient Near East, I guess you could say. Gehenna was an actual valley, and there's a bunch of stuff there that you can really dig into. But essentially, it was kind of like a bit of a warning, like, hey, if you don't behave whatever, you could end up like the people in Gehenna. Like you could end up in Gehenna, like those people, because those people were doing things that the people there at the time, I don't know if this is true, thought that they were doing things like child sacrifice. And there was also a bunch of they were kind of like, there was a big garbage pit and everything was on fire. And it's a whole thing. It was a place, like a garbage dump. It's kind of like saying, hey, if you misbehave, you're going to end up like those people picking up trash all day for a living. My mind was blown when I read about Sheol and Gehenna. I was like, excuse me? Pardon? Say what? So that's really cool to start to dig into and realize that there's actually not a lot of that. And when Jesus talks about things like, I don't know, weeping and gnashing of teeth, he doesn't say anything about hell or Gehenna. He's talking about what it feels like to exclude yourself from something good because you don't feel worthy. You're going to be unhappy. Weeping and gnashing of teeth is unhappiness. I believe, based on the studies that I've been doing, I get really passionate about this because I was so shocked that I hadn't been exposed to so much of this before. But so much of it is about recognizing that both sin, which in a really interesting version of the New Testament I just got a couple days ago, actually, they call sin basically broken roads. More on that in a minute. But the very nature of these things is that each is their own reward or punishment. Sounds a little bit like karma, justice, accountability. Like when you do good, you kind of usually experience good in return. When you do bad, you kind of tend to experience bad in return. It's pretty straightforward to me. And when you dig into it, you start to recognize that is inherent in the text. It's pretty obvious. And this externalizing, this is the other thing I'm deconstructing. I didn't write it down, but I'm definitely deconstructing the idea, getting it out of the house that the good things that happen to you are because God does good things for you exclusively, and the bad things that happen are because Satan's doing bad things. Like, I think that's such an exclusionary, externalized way of looking at the world that does not make sense to me. So yeah, lots there for sure. And yeah, Peggy makes excellent points. Love how everybody's contributing in the chat too, and that you guys get where I'm coming from, because I really wanted to be able to have this conversation and not freak people the hell out. Okay, I've also been reconstructing that faith demands questioning and wrestling, not blind acceptance of the status quo. Any religion spiritual path, and again, I don't see myself as a religious person. I see myself as a spiritual person. But any path that asks us to accept anything without question is cultish and terrifying to me. So that's a no from me from that kind of stuff. Anything that encourages questioning, encourages discomfort, encourages us to sit with something that makes us feel some type of way and explore it and sit with it and move through it. That's what I'm about. That's what I want in my life. Anyways, and there's apparently lots of that in here, which is kind of awesome. Also, animism and the universal Christ. We're going to talk about that a little bit because that was amazing. And if you're looking for a good singular resource, I think to just kind of break your old views wide open, that's a resource I'm going to be talking about, is that book, The Universal Christ. Because if I'd have read that first, it probably would have saved me a good couple $100 in books. Sorry, babe. But I'm also glad I have the other books and I've been reading the other books. But it does manage to actually cover pretty much everything I've been deconstructing and reconstructing in one singular volume, which is pretty incredible. And it's written by a Catholic Franciscan monk. So that's kind of awesome. Anyway, also reconstructing love and inclusion as demonstrated by Jesus as the Christ at the center. So love and inclusion at the center is my reconstructed version of this. And while I'm being very cautious, yeah, Peggy says this, it's hard to explain that I'm studying Christian philosophy and make it clear that you're studying spiritual ideals without the dogma. And I was really struggling with this because somebody said, why are you using in my badass chat, I used the word Christian, and somebody said, why are you using that word? And I said, well, it's kind of fucked up, isn't it? That the only people that use that word, and I want to say this cautiously. I told everybody in my life I wasn't going to say this during the chat, and here I am saying it, but whatever. I'm sorry. Love you, babe. But because I didn't want to freak people out. But the thing is like, I think it's kind of fucked up that the only people that use that word are the people with the most rigid and dogmatic beliefs about it. And I think that's kind of not the only people, but the majority of people that we're exposed to. And wouldn't it be kind of refreshing if like we could use that word and have it mean something more beautiful and more holistic and more inclusive and like less exclusionary? The challenge is if you use that word without any context, people won't know that because the majority is one way, Laurel says the priest at my first church was Franciscan. Is it Franciscan, right? Yeah, Franciscan. And he frequently told us that the Vatican doesn't control him and then would choose the more inclusive thing. Loved him. May he rest in peace. That is beautiful. I love that. I have not read Elaine Pagel's Gnostic Gospels yet. There's some interesting things here. I'm going to talk about how I've been vetting my resources. That's probably where we're headed. Yeah, that is where we're headed. Okay. I've been very careful. And in the beginning, I was really careful what I exposed myself to. Because number one, I felt really called to this and I didn't want to expose myself to something that was going to scare me away from jump by showing me a bunch of icky stuff. So I'm going to tell you the blunt way I began curating my content. And I don't say this to offend anybody. I truly don't. But it was the only way I knew how to approach this, which was basically if something was pissing off the like evangelicals, I was looking into it. If somebody was claiming to be Christian and something about their content was pissing off the evangelical side, I probably wanted to read it or listen to it. And that sounds really shitty. And I don't mean it to, because I mean, if you're evangelical, that's beautiful. If you can be evangelical and be, and actually there's somebody I follow who is evangelical, but they're a very inclusive, progressive evangelical. So fine. But like the way I think of evangelicals, like my dad, like when I think of that, I'm like, if it's pissing those people off, I want to read it. I want to see what it's about. It really helped me actually to find people and Bible translations. That's how I got started. I found out this translation was pissing off the evangelicals and I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I wanted to dig into it. I'm like, okay, let's see what the deal is. So now I'm going to share a metric fuck to, oh God, I'm swearing a lot in this stream. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm worked up. Or maybe it just makes me feel good to swear while talking about the Bible. I don't know what that says about me. Anyways, I'm going to share so many resources right now. I have, to poor Peggy's dismay, began collecting Bible resources. Poor Peggy, when my like fourth study Bible came home, she's like, oh God, now it's Bibles. First it was tarot, now it's Bibles. But it really kind of is. I'm going to share the things that have been working and also some of the things that I would not recommend from jump that I experimented with. But we're going to start off talking about Bible translations. And just to give us a basis, as you know, if you are even a little bit curious, 100% go right to NRSV UE, because I think that it is the safest. It felt the safest to me to read and is still my mainstay. But I wanted to explain to you or share with you the resource that helped me decide which one I wanted to start with, other than the NRSV UE, or what helped me kind of decide which ones I was willing to even try. It should come up in my recently viewed, like in my history. So I'm just going to try to find the video that helped. I will recognize the thumbnail if I can find the video. You'd think I would have prepped this in advance, but oh, here it is. I found it. Perfect. Look at that. Okay, so share, create post. No. We're not creating a post. Share, copy link. That's what I want. Copy link. Okay, I'm going to throw this one in the chat. It's a 7-minute video, but it basically goes over the, and I'm going to actually open it so I can just reference its chart real quick. It shows a diagram, and you'll see it on the thumbnail, but it shows a diagram that has like four, like, an arrow, like a line this way and a line up and down. And at the top of the top line, it's Christian. And at the bottom of that line is secular. On the left side of the line is literal, and on the right side is paraphrase. So we commonly know that with Bible translations, there is I shouldn't say we commonly, in the scholarly community, the most common way to hear translations being talked about is from the literal side, where it's word for word literal translation philosophy, over to the paraphrase side. Now, the difference between these two things, but it's a spectrum, right? When you get to the word for word size, it's like literally somebody taking one language and translating each individual word, which, while it might be kind of accurate, can also kind of be inaccurate, because if you take any translation that you're trying to do of any language to another language and you go word by word, you might miss the point of that sentence, because think of doing that in English to a different language, right? Like, imagine how that would look and what you would end up with on the other side of that. Thought for thought is a literal translation of what does the entire, say, phrase or sentence, and how can you translate that as closely as possible to what it was saying in its original language to what it is saying in English, right? Or in whatever language you're translating to. So that's thought for thought. So we have word for word and thought for thought. Thought for thought comes away from the literal side a little bit. And then you have, towards the far end, you have paraphrasing. So that's where you get things like, they call it like literal equivalence versus dynamic equivalence. So on the far right side is where you're seeing things like taking an idea and translating the idea. So not just the phrase or the sentence or whatever, or the thought, but the entire concept, and trying to put it into maybe more readable language. So I've got and then you've got even further into the phrase, like phrase by phrase kind of idea, and kind of like that idea of, what did I just say it was called? Paraphrasing. Okay. Past paraphrasing, you even have what is probably no longer even a translation and more like a reimagining. There's a term for it. I forget what it's called, but like I have a Bible here called The Message that is like, I'm going to read you a psalm because it's actually kind of ridiculous, but this is one guy, he's a pastor, and he rewrote the entire thing. It's actually quite a progressive translation, which is one of the things I like about it, but the language is hilarious. Like one of the Proverbs, oh no, wait, let me go to Psalms. It's kind of funny. I'm not going to say anything like, trust me, it's not going to sound crazy religious. Let's see this. Sing to God a brand new song. Oh, that's not a good one. There's better ones. There's one. Okay. To explain this, I saw a video once where Bible scholars were asked if what they were being read was a Taylor Swift song lyric or a psalm passage from The Message. The language is that modern. So it's very modern, which means it reads more like reading a novel, I guess, but it's sometimes kind of ridiculous, but it's very easy to understand. That said, if you're looking for like a good story arc, like let's say you're struggling, let's say you're reading a book in the Bible and you want to like understand the overall like storyline, The Message is great for that because you can kind of get the idea of the story. But it's not a very accurate like phrase for phrase translation. It's one guy's version of it. I think it's really nice, and I actually first encountered it, and the reason I picked one up is because I was watching a sermon by a really progressive gay pastor, and he was using this translation, and I realized why, because one of the pieces of text he was referring to in his sermon was a piece that normally contains what is kind of a clobbery like passage, and it didn't contain any problematic language, and I was like, oh, that's kind of nice, it's kind of refreshing. So I do like that. But anyways, so that video that I sent you that I posted in the chat will actually I've been watching The Chosen too. More on that a bit. But anyways, it will actually give you an idea of how to pick. But what happened for me is I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, the NRSV is way into the secular and literal corner. And most of and the ones that I wanted to avoid, the translations I wanted to avoid were ones that fell too high up into the Christian translations, because that meant they were going to likely have more dogmatic text, likely not be very progressive in their wording. It just unfortunately is what it is. And so anything to the literal and Christian was most likely going to be a bad fit for me. So I have avoided the NASB, the ESV, which is the ESV is one of the favorites among evangelicals. So I've definitely avoided it like the plague. I have looked it up. There's ways you can like look up passages and read different versions, and that can also help you to figure out which one, if this is something you want to dig into. But ESV, KJV, which is the King James version, ASV, the one that's supposed to be in the center is the CSB, which is the Christian Standard Bible. I tried to get on board with the CSB because it's right in the center, should be really good. But I found that it still felt a little too clobbery for my tastes. I don't know how else to describe that. So I have been the most comfortable in the NRSV, and surprisingly, even the NIV and the NLT, both of which, if you see on the chart, are still up in the Christian quadrant, Christian half, but they're more to the paraphrase side. I find them very readable. I just make sure that if I'm looking for footnotes or scholarly thoughts or study Bibles, I try to make sure I remember that there's a different translation philosophy there. NIV, I haven't minded the text most of the time, but don't forget I reread everything in my NRSV UE to double check. But it's the problem I have with the NIV, and I do have a couple. The problem I have with the NIV is usually the footnotes. I do have one NIV that doesn't have that problem, and I'll explain why. But most of the time, because I'm getting study Bibles and I'm reading footnotes and I'm reading additional things, I don't want the additional things to be overly dogmatic in their approach. And so that means I'm fairly limited in what I pick up. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm going to remind everybody, I totally get that it's really tempting to start talking about Canada, America, politics, nationalism. We're not going to do that in here, guys. I appreciate you. But at the same time, it's too easy for things to get real out of whack and real out of control in the chat. So we don't do politics at all in here. Sorry, guys. And I get it. Politics and social commentary. I know it's a blurred line between the two. And I appreciate that just because it keeps us on track. And there are going to be people in this chat who are on all sides of the political spectrum, and everybody's welcome here. So no need to apologize. I just want to clarify. Please don't. Yeah, nobody feel bad. It's very difficult to have this conversation and not have it go there. But I do try to keep this space free of that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. But anyways, so there is a lot of stuff. The early church had a different view of women and Peter's. Yeah, it's funny. There's actually some interesting things I've been reading about Paul specifically, because Paul's really conservative in his take. But when you start to unpack it, you can find even some very interesting things about Paul's take that can be unpacked and deconstructed as well. So that's interesting. Okay, so anyways, I'm gonna flip my camera on so we can talk about resources. But I've totally messed up my camera views, so it's gonna take me a second to figure it out. So I'm going to nope. I'm gonna put on a view. It's gonna look real weird, I think. Oh no, it's gonna look fine. Cool. Let me edit it. Okay. So I need to bear with me, y'all. I'm gonna just okay. I'm trying to fix, excuse me, I'm trying to fix my stuff. Okay, it's gonna look real weird for a second, you guys. I'm gonna fix it, I promise. Okay, I'm trying to fix stuff before I forget how. Okay, so there's that, and now I'm gonna try this, and then I'm gonna try that. No. Well, shoot. Oh no, I want this one. Oh, that's the one I want. Okay, there we go. Look, I have a table. How nice. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for hanging out. Anybody that has to go, because yeah, again, we're gonna be here for a bit. Okay. Yeah, so let me show you Bibles first. So when I first started, I picked this up. This is just a regular NRSV UE, pretty basic. There's no real footnotes. Like there's just the basic stuff for translation things. It's nice. I guess if I ever wanted a copy to like take somewhere, I could take this. And I'm glad I have it, but I haven't really used it because I shortly afterward got this one. And this is, oh my God, this is my main one. I need to turn up my lights. Why are they low again? I feel like they keep going down to like, I need to fix it so y'all can see what the hell I'm doing. And again, feel free to like not look at the screen at this stuff. Just like, ugh, like I want to hear about this, but I don't want to see your shit. That's totally fine. Okay, I'm gonna change it to. Is that better? Oh, it's black. That's probably not helping. Okay, let me open up the pages. Okay. So like, look, you can even see some of my notes. Holy Spirit equals divine feminine. I have significant numbers that I wrote down. 7 is really interesting. The 7th son, 7 years of famine, 7 days. There's 40 for fasting and suffering. There's 12. I mean, I've just been like writing all kinds of stuff in. Okay, so I added these like tabby things, super handy. But this is actually the NRSV UE with the apocryphal books. Apocrypha, quick note for those of you curious. Apocrypha are the books that are not part of official canon. Some of them are actually in Catholic canon, I guess. I don't know how that works, but Apocrypha aren't official canon, but they are considered, I guess, genuine, or at least many books in the Bible are ascribed to authors that we know couldn't have written them, etc. And so this one has the Apocrypha, but it also has a lot of journaling room, which has come in very handy because I do a lot of journaling. I've also been, and this is where anybody who's a total purist about Bibles are going to want to look the other way. I have been tearing up another Bible and putting articles in this one. And I've been doing that with Tomoe River paper. So I've been interleaving Tomoe River paper into my Bible, like gluing it in and adding articles and things like, look, cigarettes. Which is a whole side quest thing. I have a lot of notes and highlights. And my basic tip for this, if you're going to write and do this, which I think is amazing, by the way, is that if you're going to make notes, basically just highlight whatever the note is about and your note in the same color. And then you can easily match them up, even when it gets super crowded like this. I learned that somewhere. I don't know where, but it really, really helped. So that was amazing. And I love how the page I turned to has my note about how God says it is not good that the man should be alone. God wanted Adam to have a life partner. This was actually part of my deconstruction around queer relationships and understanding that God's ultimate plan, according to the Bible, for humans was to have a partner, and probably didn't give a shit who that partner was, as long as, like obviously another human, but like other than that, like that was the like main thing. Because that was part of that whole deconstruction process for me. It was like, there's so much evidence that was the intention, right? I've got a bunch of articles in here that are about the flood and the flood myth corresponding to other stuff. But anyway, so this is my journaling Bible. So basically what I do is, this is my main working copy. This is where if I listen to a podcast or I read a book and I get an interesting note, I come back here and I dump it in here. So this is my main holding ground for all of that stuff. But this has, when I say this has the Apocrypha, it has, these are my extra tabs. It has Tobit, Judith, Esther, Wisdom of Solomon, which is, I can't wait to get into that. Ben Sirach or Sirach, Letter of Jeremiah, Prayer of Azaroth, Barak, Susanna, Bella and the Dragon, Maccabees 1 and 2 and 4 and 3, Esdras, Psalm 151. The Catholic Bibles that have Apocrypha only have, I think, 7 apocryphal books. This NRSV UE has 14, I believe. So it's got more apocryphal books than a standard Bible that says it has Apocrypha has. So yeah. So this is really great because it's complete. Now, I also have been reading the Bible chronologically, which means I'm not reading it like cover to cover, although it often works out that way. I'm reading it chronologically. So for example, I read like Genesis like 1 through 12 and then did a whole side quest into the book of Job and also reading the books of Enoch, which are pseudepigrapha. So bringing us back to that, pseudepigrapha are, I don't know what the right term is. I don't know how to define this. Let's see. Pseudepigrapha. Hold on. Let me just Google it so I can say it right. Versus pseudepigrapha. We call everything apocrypha, but that's not actually true. The technical term, apocrypha and pseudepigrapha. So apocrypha are texts outside the biblical canon, but are included in some Christian traditions. Pseudepigrapha are considered to be works falsely attributed to biblical figures. It's kind of a gray area though, because like we know that, like, for example, the books of Moses were probably not written by Moses. We don't actually have any scholarly basis for Moses as a figure. We're not sure he actually existed. That's the scholarly take anyway. Do I work your spiritual practice? Oh my God, how did I? Oh my God, I'm sorry. Y'all, this is what happens. I was referring to notes, but I missed a note. Yes. Yes, tarot is very much embedded in my spiritual practice. The two are very, 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 very blended. But yes, obviously I work with tarot on its own. I work with this stuff on its own, and the two are very harmonized for me. So I'm so sorry I didn't make that more clear earlier. I think I breezed past it. I was like, yeah, tarot's going nowhere, and then moved on. We will talk about that though, because I've got resources that combine the two. I've got like at least 3 that I can see right now, maybe 4. Actually 4. I have 4 for sure that I can see right now that blend the two. But yes, I do both together and separately. Yes, Peggy is correct. Sorry that was not clear, but yes, I do both. Okay, so this is my main holding place. I also have a faith journal where I've been keeping track of like notes on things, where I might drop prayers in, or I might keep track of anything along this, like tracking, like planner, like a planner. But anyways, this version is great because it has, like I said, more apocrypha. It's got room to write. When it comes to writing in this, let me show you the pen I use. If you ever want to write in a really thin book, it doesn't have to be this book, obviously. But if you ever want to write in a really thin book, I did a bunch of research on this because, that's how I roll. And this is literally the best pen for not bleeding through. And if you're somebody that likes a little bit of like an indentation left in your paper because it just feels cool, I don't know if anybody's really nerdy like that, like me like that. This is great for that too. But this is a Uni 0.7 Jetstream. Oh, I could show you down here. It's an Uni 0.7 Jetstream pen. So they look like this. I got like a 5-pack of them on Amazon. I keep one of these with this study Bible, which actually lives. I'm going to be real nerdy for a second, y'all. This is my Bible bag. Am I a dork? Yes, I am. So in this front pocket has been living the Bible Tarot. We'll talk about that in a minute. I have a Canon Ivy printer because on Sunday mornings I do a draw from the Tarot of Her, and I take a picture and I put it in my faith journal, and then I do other stuff in there too, and take sermon notes. There's a whole thing about like finding good people to listen to and stuff like that. But highlighters, obviously. And notes. This is like a tracker that I printed that has, I could not tell you where I got this, y'all. And I think I actually had to edit it. But this is basically a chronological reading plan. So you can see how, in between Genesis 11 and Genesis 12, I read from the Nag Hammadi or the Dead Sea, I think it was the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which has a bunch of the pseudepigraphal books. I read the Adam and Eve 1 and 2. Do not recommend. They are whiny. They are ridiculous. It was so hard to get through. It was interesting, but it was not something I would consider. It makes sense why it's not canon. Let's leave it that way. They were insufferable. You think Harry Potter was bad in like book 6, being like really like all about me, and my life sucks? Yeah, it was so much worse. And Adam and Eve 1 and 2 was really bad. They kept trying to kill themselves. And like, God's like, for fuck's sake, like, will you just stop? Like, yes, you can eat. You don't have to just not eat. Like, it was so dumb. Anyway, first Enoch, second Enoch, 3 Enoch. They were a journey. They were interesting. I'm glad I read them. There were some cool things in there. Definitely saw some aliens. It's cool. There's the Book of Giants I read. I didn't read Joshua. I think I skimmed it. I was like, there's nothing useful for me here. It was just not interesting. Anyways, but so this is basically me. I'm not reading according to these calendar dates, but this is basically a chronological thing. And it's just mostly helping me to know, like, for example, where the Apocrypha go. Oh, there it is. Look, I got it from Let's Open God's Word Chronological Reading Plan. I don't know if I had to change it. Like I said, like I had to look up where everything goes. So like Baruch goes here. Here's a bunch of the apocryphal books and kind of where they go up here and down here. And like, you can find chronological reading plans, but finding ones that include the apocrypha and especially the pseudepigrapha was like almost impossible. I keep in here a little folder for when I have articles I want to glue into my Bible, which I'll show you how and where I'm doing that from. But anyways, this is where I keep that stuff, just mostly so I can keep it organized. And so when I'm ready to like work with it, I can just pull it out and lay it out. Yes, Jenny, this is such a good point. I should have been more clear. So yeah, the NRSV UE is the 2022 translation. The NRSV is better than a lot of the other ones I looked at, but is outdated by about 30 years. Y'all are asking about Yeah, I can't write down all these resources. You have no idea how many I'm about to show you. So anyways, so that's my main like working spot for study, note taking, all this kind of stuff. Peggy's point. Oh my God, y'all, I have to share with you. Somebody shared something with me literally right before this stream that was the best freaking thing I've seen in like so long. Let me find it. I will get you a link. It's an Instagram reel. Where is it? Here it is. Oh my God. It's by an account on Instagram called A Good Witch Official. Can I link the post? Let me see if I can. Okay. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to link what I can link, which speaks to Peggy's point. Yeah, don't kill people. Pretty sure that's a universal belief. I know, right? Yeah. Anyways, okay. So I got that. I also got this. So this was a fun side questing journey that I've been doing. This is a NLT, mostly because it's really readable. It's a compact, large text. And y'all, so here's what I did. This was me, like, again, this is really about reconstruction and what that looks like for me. But this was an exercise I've been doing in reconstruction. I created a color coding system. I call this my inspiration Bible. And what I have done is I've created a flag color, and I have the flags in this order so that I can easily just flip to any color and like find it so it stays organized. So I have a color for mother energy. So this is going to be divine feminine, mother, or Sophia, wisdom, anything like that. The divine feminine, when I feel inspired or I read a passage that reminds me of the divine feminine, I highlight it in this lighter pink when I remember, and I flag it with this color. So like if I go to any pink flag, just to give you an idea, I have, yeah, here. Here's a reference to for the Almighty has made life very blah, blah, blah. So there's a reference to the Almighty. So I highlight it, which I told you is the El Shaddai thing, right? Purple is divination. Okay, let me just go back. Okay. Heart is anything healing. I actually based this. Okay, sorry. I'm such a nerd and I'm excited to talk about this, but I based this. I'm actually subscribed to Esoterica. Yeah, this is a great channel. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Anyway, I based this initially on the chakras, and then I added, so I have all the 7 chakras have an association here, and then I also added earth, father, and mother. So I have heart chakra, so everything associated with that: healing, calming, grace, grief, emotions, and love. Third eye, so that's going to be magic, intuition, spiritual gifts, and divination. Wow, there's a lot of purple in my Bible. Isn't that interesting? There's so much magic and divination and shit in the Bible. It's amazing. Anyways, I have sacral. So that's going to be sensuality, experience, sex, feeling, and movement. So anything about like experiencing is sacral chakra. Throat, communication, trust, expression, prayer, and faith. Solar plexus, I have empowerment, strength, drive, and determination. So earth is anywhere I see references to like nature, earth's majesty, the beauty of creation, like that kind of stuff. And father is anything divine masculine, loving father, God provider, that kind of stuff. And then root chakra is safety, security, stability, grounding, foundation, acceptance, and protection. So as I finish a book of the Bible, I go through and I literally like mark everything I can find that lines up with these. And all I do is highlight the text and put a flag on it. So if I'm ever in a mood and I'm like, I need to be reminded of heart energy right now, or maybe I'm struggling, I can go to that section and like read those highlights. And then when I find one that's particularly good in a section, I will put a star on my, I don't know if you can see, I'll put a star on the flag. So like if I go to that green star, so that light green is going to be heart. I'll find a passage. Oh, it's about Ruth. Yeah. It's just about Ruth and kindness, and it makes my heart happy. And then there's there's one here for nature in the book of Job, because there is this absolutely breathtaking description of nature in the book of Job. So anyways, you love my Stitch cup? Oh, that's great. So anyways, this what has been really great for me, and you can see how far I'm into my deep dive. I have not read the entire thing, y'all. I'm still into it. Now, I've been doing a lot of New Testament work separate, but I haven't considered it. I haven't marked it here because I haven't done my official study of it, but I'm doing a lot of New Testament reading along with all my Old Testament study. Also, okay, can we just talk for a second about monotheism briefly? Because this is also something I didn't put on my list, but I've deconstructed monotheism in the Bible because it's not true. Monolatry is the more correct word for the Bible. Monotheism says that we believe there are no other gods. That's actually not what the Bible says. The Bible's very clear in saying that there are other gods. Ours is just the best, and it's the only one for us. But there's plenty of other gods acknowledged in the Bible. And if the text, like, there, you shall have no other gods besides me or before me. Yes, thank you, Emma. You beat me to it. Yes. There's so many passages in the Old Testament that make it crystal clear. Look, they've eaten from the tree of knowledge. Now they should be like us. Makes no sense if there's no us. Anyways. And yes, Yahweh was a storm or God before he became the creator God, and to only believe in him was not to believe in the gods of the neighbors. Yes, a lot of this had to do, a lot of the stuff I've been learning from the scholarly take is that a lot of this is about the creation of Israel, like of culture, like Israel as a culture, as a community. And so a lot of the laws and things were meant to establish this culture. It wasn't exclusively meant to be, this is your spiritual practice and this is why. A lot of it was meant to be things that would sustain the culture and create and sustain the culture. Yeah. Peggy's out there just bringing all the stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. This one is the New Living Translation, NLT compact giant print. So it's smaller, like you can tell it's much smaller, chunky, but the text is nice and easy to read. It's not super tiny. I actually spent a lot of time researching font sizes for different Bibles I bought because I want it to be readable. I do enjoy the NLT as a straight Bible because as long as there's no commentary, you're just getting a slightly more readable version of the text. You do have to still contend with older translations of clobber passages and things like that that have been updated. But because I don't rely on this for truth, I rely on this for just dipping in, and I like the language. It's easy to read. It's nice to go to, but I don't treat this as like the final answer. And I think that's the thing. I don't treat any of it as the final answer. And I also don't assume that like this is telling me how to live. How do I say this right? It's not giving, like, I don't see it as a rule book. I see it as like, there's wisdom, there's information to dip into, etc. Okay. The articles that you saw me pasting into my other Bible come from this. Oh my God, this book. Okay. I have 3 versions of this Bible, and I highly recommend it if you are interested in study, because there's this version, which is the one I'm tearing up. Because I bought it and I hated the hardback. And I was like, well, I bought it. I got it at like a discount. So I'm like, okay, well, I bought it. I got it at a discount. I'm just going to rip pages out of it. And this is my actual nice copy, which is I like the faux leather copies, but this is an NIV version. This is when I said that there is an NIV, that I don't think it matters that it's NIV translation. It's this one. And that's because these are both copies of the cultural backgrounds study Bible. Now I also have this in an NRSV, not the updated edition, because there isn't one yet. I'm keeping my eyes out. If it ever comes out in an updated edition, I'm snapping it up like with a quickness. But I have this is both NIV because that's what was currently available. These came out before the updated edition, and I think there's only a few copies you can get in print, and they're in the most popular translations. So anyways, I also have it on iPad in NRSV updated edition, but I find myself almost always going to physical copies. I have used the iPad version, but for the NRSV translation specifically, but I don't find the translation actually matters that much for this, because the punchline of this is that it's a scholarly translation scholarly study Bible. It's the NIV translation, but it's a scholarly study Bible. So what it tries to do is put everything in context of the culture, history, the time. You get a lot of articles that contextualize what you're reading. So like, for example, one of my favorites, which I'll put in here because I've already ripped it out of this one, is one about being created in God's image or likeness. Also this, hello, do we see the goddess Newt in like the first few pages? Like, it's incredible. It's really good. The articles are incredible. And yeah, here it is, image and likeness. So I've actually glued this into my Bible. This is really interesting because in Genesis, it says we were created like God's image or whatever. I've got to give you my list of resources, and I'm going to be down the Bible rabbit hole for a long time if I don't stop. But I will just say this one. To be created in a likeness of God, the whole thing about idolatry and stuff was that back then there would be statues and stuff, but they weren't seen as just statues. They were literally seen to contain the essence of that God within it. So you were seen to be literally carrying your gods in these objects. They were like created as physical objects. So when you hear about idolatry in the Bible, it's that specific practice that is like, hey, dude, like, don't put God into an object. Like that's Don't do that. God is not an object. God is not in an object. That's what idolatry is about, because it was seen that the actual God was in the object. It wasn't just like a statue to honor a God. That's obviously fine. You see that stuff everywhere in churches. The issue was like, please don't do a practice where like you bring a bunch of gods around with you. Cause like, number one, gods aren't our pets, and they're not like, I have the same problem with, all spiritualities that are like, hey, you're my dancing monkey. Like, no, actually no. But anyways, here's the interesting thing though. The same kind of term used to be a likeness of God, which was meant to be like an idol, that sort of language was to contain the essence of the God. The same language is used when describing that people were made in God's image or likeness. It's not that we were made to look like God. We were made to contain God essence within us, to represent God. That's a very different premise, and one that is not clear at all without that cultural context of what that word means. It's why I started to get really passionate about looking at the original Hebrew words for some of these things. The Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, the first part of the Bible, is mostly written in Hebrew and Aramaic. The New Testament is mostly in Greek. Well, if you want to know what something means, it's helpful to look at the actual word and start to like really dig into, what does that word mean and what did it mean then? And there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this cultural context Bible. And a lot of the footnotes are not, here's how you should live your life. The footnotes and the study notes in this Bible, like, so the study notes is like this whole piece here. These study notes are more contextual. Like, for example, here it says like a lion, and then it says lion imagery is common in the ancient Near East. There are lion-lioness cults in Egypt, particularly associated with On, where Joseph's in-laws were from. And it goes on, it gives information about Mesopotamia and what was going on there. So this particular study Bible isn't trying to tell you how to apply the Bible to your life. It's trying to tell you how to contextualize whatever you just read based on facts of like what was going on in the ancient Near East at that time. What were the Israeli people doing at that time? Like, how did this apply to them? Okay, so again, if you're going to pick up a study Bible, this is like the one and only I would recommend, because of that. It's non-denominational. It's very much non-dogmatic. It comes at things from more of a historical perspective, and it's been my mainstay for study Bibles, to the point where I kind of almost regret getting the others, but the others have been nice for different reasons. Okay, so I'm going to real quick drive by my other study Bibles, and then we're going to get into other resources. I've got a whole list of resources to share with you that are not books as well. So there's that. Okay. This is the study Bible I'm currently working with this year, mostly because I like the little side pieces, and it's got a slightly less academic and slightly more spiritual bent. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. The one I just showed you is the Cultural Backgrounds Study Bible, and the cover, when you look it up, will look more like this brown cover. It'll say Cultural Backgrounds Study Bible. There's also really good like maps and timelines and charts. This is definitely the historical study Bible I would recommend. The amount of YouTube reviews of study Bibles I've watched to try to understand like what's being said about them. Because usually if it's like, oh, this is why it's really bad because it says men and women are equal, I'm like, oh, I want to check that out. You know what I mean? Very helpful. Okay, so this one is the one I'm reading now. This is the Every Woman's Bible, NLT. I would not have been able to read this in the beginning, because it does go a little too spiritual or religious, I guess. But now that I'm more solid in where I'm at with everything, I can read this and not have it like annoy me. And actually, I really like one of the things this specific one does really nicely is it's got these like little like reflective, inspirational call outs, but it specifically will highlight the women in the Bible and kind of zoom in on their stories a little bit, which is really lovely. So like, for example, if I go into, let's go into one where I know there's like some women like Ruth. Here's a whole section on Ruth. So it's like talks about her and her story kind of thing a little bit here and where she comes from. And there's some of these like cute little quote things, whatever. I don't care about that so much, but I do care about these like little zoom ins to the feminine characters in the Bible. I really, really appreciate those. And I find that because the NLT is a more paraphrased version, it's more of a thought for thought translation. It's easy to read. So this is the one I'm currently reading in, but I reread because I'm this much of a nerd. I read whatever chunk of reading I'm doing for the day. I'll read it in this because it's just nice and readable. And I get these like sweet little call outs that I kind of enjoy because they're more inspirational. And then that is a weird link, babe. Is that an Amazon link? That's a weird link. Why is it Searle? What is that? As long as it's good, I don't care. Is exegesis, I've heard that word. That's like hermeneutics, right? Historical critical. Yeah, I would say it's historical critical. You mean that Bible? I would say, I would classify it as historical critical, or at least, I don't know if I'd call it critical. I don't know if there is such a thing in a study Bible, but I would call it historical for sure. Oh, you used a URL shortener. I get you. Okay. Anyways. So this one is really nice, but this one is like for readable. And then I'll read whatever the chunk is and I will reread it in my NRSV anyways. Or if I stumble upon something that like reads a little bit too shitty, I'll check it against the NRSV UE that way too. But generally I've been enjoying this. This is my current one. And mostly because I had to pick one, or I was going to, for a while, I was literally every single bit of reading, I was reading it in like 5 of these and comparing. And while that was really lovely, it also got kind of time consuming. So I had to narrow it down. So I'm trying to mostly just read in one version and then just cross check into my NRSV UE. Okay, these next 2 are the ones that are interesting, but have footnotes that are the most dogmatic, and therefore I'm glad I have them, and they're pretty and they're helpful in some ways, but I'm very cautious with the footnotes. Okay, so the first one is this one. Now this one actually has some really interesting things. This is the chronological life application study Bible. Now it's the life application part you got to watch out for, because it's going to tell you how to apply the Bible to your life, which is by nature going to be dogmatic. It just is, in my opinion. It just is. It's better than some of the other ones. It's not as insane as like the ESV or some of the other types, but it's still there. What's interesting to me about this one is that it was actually translated in collaboration. The translation team consisted of both Christians and Messianic Jews. So there is a little bit of Jewish philosophy that weaves its way into some of the notes and articles. Is your comment being deleted? I'm not seeing it at all, Lone Wolf. So it may be being filtered. So sometimes if it's politics, it might get filtered automatically. I don't know. I can't see that chat. I'll see if I can see it, but if it's a link, it will automatically get filtered. Because YouTube does that. No, we're not seeing it at all. So YouTube's blocking it for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what it contains, so I can't tell you. But usually they'll let us approve it. So it's not being approvable. So it's something happening on the back end. Links just won't come through. So if you try to share a link, that's just how it is. Anyway. This one's interesting, and what drew me into this one is that even in the very beginning, there's a breakdown of the difference between like the Jewish take and the Christian take of something. Was it original sin or something? I noticed it right away, and I was like, oh, that's cool. The interesting thing about this one is that it's literally like, see, I read this stuff, Satan's plan against us. Like, no, that's BS. I'm not doing that. Oh yeah, here we go. Are all people sinful by nature? Traditional Jewish view, and then Christian Messianic Jewish view. And I thought that was really interesting. And I have seen that in a few places in here. But the main reason I got this is because it's actually the text of the Bible is in chronological order. And sometimes it is tiresome to always try to figure out where in the timeline you are, because the Bible is not put together chronologically. It's somewhat chronological, but where it hops around, this will actually split the book. And so you might be, especially in the New Testament, you might like it harmonizes the New Testament. So like if you're reading about Jesus's birth, you're going to read like 4 different accounts back to back instead of reading about it here and then reading about it later there. And having it clumped together like that can be handy from a study perspective. Oh, that's weird. I have no idea why that's happening. Hello, I'm not seeing it. Peggy's a mod, so if any comment comes through that needs approval, she can approve it, so she'd see it. If we're not seeing it, then something's happening on the YouTube side, and I can't control that. Nothing in my settings changes that. That's all YouTube side. So I'm not sure why that would happen. I'm so sorry if that's happening, guys. It could even just be a connection issue. I don't know. Okay, and then this is my last one, and this is the one I reach for the least, but it's real pretty because it's got lots of pictures. Okay, but the footnotes are are also pretty dogmatic. I think of the 2, the life application is the most likely to be like, here's how you should live your life, and not helpful. This one is called the Illustrated. I actually started out doing some work in this one, but this one is called the Illustrated Study Bible. And I just like it because there's like a lot of charts like that are color, and you know how I am with color, right? So there's like, these are all Israel's festivals, or like there's really nice, pretty maps in here, so I'm not really using this one much. but like there's nice breakdowns of characters. Like here's a character, here's a bunch about Samuel. And you'll find like just more like these kinds of things, like breakdowns stuff with timelines. So this is nice, but like it's a lot. And because I don't want to have to weed through the dogma, I don't find myself reaching for this. I do pretty much, as you can tell, use Bible tabs in almost all my Bibles just to make it easy to reference things. These are the ones I like. They're rainbow and they're little mini ones and they stick real nice and they're good. Okay, anyways, I feel like that's plenty of Bible talk. Okay, let's take a quick segue from all the show and tell. And I want to talk about real quick some resources you may want to write down that are not physical products. So number one, when I was new to this, I should have done this part first, but whatever, here we are. The first person that I encountered that like literally was so healing for me is a bishop by the name of Bishop John Shelby Spong. Now, if you go on YouTube and you just search his name, John Shelby Spong or Bishop John Shelby Spong, and sort the results by most viewed and look at he's done talks at colleges and he's sat down with all kinds of people, but look for one of his longer talks and just watch one of them if you're interested, because when I tell you his words healed some things in me I did not even know were broken. And to give you the flavor, I'm going to wreck my stuff if I'm not careful here. Okay, there we go. I have a little junk journal that Danny made me that I put little quotes in and stuff that like I really like. And I put one in the cover of this. And here's a quote from John Shelby Spong and why I like it so much. He says this: "No one is ever helped into wholeness by being told how broken they are. No one is ever helped into forgiveness by being told how guilty they are. No one is ever helped into being good by being told how evil they are. And yet, that is what we say in liturgies over the centuries, and we call it good news." So I think the task we face today is to bring not a religion of rescue, which leaves us only with a debilitating sense of gratitude, but to bring us somehow into a religion of wholeness that empowers us to be more deeply and more fully human. He really calls out things like original sin in the church. He calls out the fall. He calls out the misunderstanding of like what happened with Jesus. Like he calls out all that stuff. And he's like, the point is to be good people. Like that's the point. I also have the biblical tarot. We'll talk about that. Anyway, Bishop John Shelby Spong, if you listen to anything of his, it's incredible, because to hear somebody who has faith speak about faith in such an inclusive and holistic way that is so loving, incredible. So really recommend him. Also, if I were to give you like one, because I'm about to show a whole bunch of books, we'll do a tarot break and then we'll do a whole bunch of books. But this one, if I had to give one recommendation, it would be this. I just finished this. And if I'd have only known, because in this book, I thought it was going to be a real Jesus-centric book. But he basically starts it out by laying the groundwork that Christ was not Jesus's last name. Christ was a title. And he talks about how Christ is basically inherent in all things and people. It's actually kind of an animistic view if you really want to tap into it. I think he kind of says it's not animistic, but I think it's kind of animistic. But anyways, it's really incredible. And something he does in here that I was not expecting. I set this aside until I was ready to read about Jesus. Okay. I wasn't expecting it to be so holistic, but he deconstructs so eloquently original sin, hell, the devil, the crucifixion, like all the things that are basically the divine feminine, all of it. He covers it all. And he does it in such a beautiful way. It took me a little bit to get into. I'm so sorry, Katie. Yes, we are going to have a tarot break. But yeah, he gets into all of this, and it's the amount of things I have read in here that I was like, oh my God, I've already studied this. I already studied that. I already deconstructed this. Damn it, if I only found this first. In fact, so much stuff. Anyway, yeah, here's one. If you're frightened into God, it is never the true God that you meet. If you are loved into God, you meet a God worthy of both Jesus and Christ. Like, anyways, if you're curious about any of this stuff and you want to like read somebody who's not going to basically say you're going to hell if you don't believe XYZ or if you don't do ABC or whatever, he's a very safe person, I find, to read. Y'all are doing so good. Y'all are doing so good, truly. Okay, let's take a quick tarot break. Tarot and witchy break. How about that? So this book, This is called Discovering Christian Witchcraft, is independently published, and it is by Sarah Rastresen, who is a content creator on YouTube who identifies as a Christian witch and has a very nerdy scholarly brain, which I just love. She reads tarot, she does witchy stuff, she has like Christian Witch Sundays. I think she does some kind of like church for Christian witches kind of thing. It's kind of fun. She has faith, but she definitely looks at her lens is very much through the lens of inclusion and witchcraft, and she's highly, highly progressive. I will say this book in the second, there's portions of this that get a little bit preachy, heavy-handed for her personal beliefs, which I think is fine. It's just that it got a little bit much for me at certain points. I'm like, okay, I get it. The church is bad. But like, can we get to the content? But her bibliography is incredible. It's very well researched and something that she does a really good job of. And this was so helpful to me. The word witch before Jesus, she breaks down passages in the Bible that mention witchcraft being evil and breaks them down and talks about cultural context, what those words meant, what they meant when they said witch, why there is a historical basis for looking at that word in a different way and that it is not what we think. And she is very good at listing her sources and her bibliography in this. So it's again, very well researched. And she does the exact same thing, if I remember correctly, with the clobber passages. I believe she also does cover. Maybe not, though. She might have been focused more on the witchy part. Talks about why they call themselves Christian witches. This was co-authored with Emile de Prada, who I don't know as well. And I don't remember who wrote what. There's a section on divination and how divination works. But if you're curious about her take on stuff or her vibe, watch her on TikTok or watch her on YouTube. Again, she's Sarah Rastresen, just like you see on the title there, Rastresen. There's another book I have on my Kindle but have not read yet called The Path of the Christian Witch. So yeah. I missed the link for that first big font version. Do you mean the little compact? Wait, I don't think we shared a big font version of something. I don't know. Peggy will have to tell us, and I think she stepped away for a minute. Okay. Anyway, so if you want to deconstruct in the whole, like, the Bible says witches and divination are bad, this is really good for that. It really unpacks this stuff. If you mean the compact one, I didn't post a link, but it is just called the New Living Translation Giant Print. You can look for any compact large print Bible. In fact, I only got this, y'all, because there is an NRSV UE compact edition coming out. I think it's coming out like this month or April or something. I've had it in my wish list forever, but it wasn't available when I started this whole thing. So I just grabbed an NLT. But if you do want a compact one and you want it to be the NRSV UE, you could look that up. It's like got a peach cover. It's coming out like within a couple weeks, I think. But this one works fine and it does have nice, good print. I don't know if the other one has good print. I have seen the Christo Paganism book, but I have not read it. I was actually just looking at that the other day. So yeah, I haven't read it yet, but she's really great for harmonizing pagan and Christian stuff. And I think I addressed that in the beginning, Lone Wolf. In the first like 20 minutes or maybe even 40 minutes of this stream, I got into a lot more detail. I'm not 100% sure why. I just was like, I want to read the Bible. And, but I don't want, like, now that I know what my beliefs are, I want to read it and just see if there's anything interesting in there. That's kind of where it started. There wasn't a desire for my spiritual path to explore. Just it was more academic and like, I guess, mythological in my interest. And then it shifted as I started getting into it. But yes, I do have a lot of information about background and where this all started there. Okay. Another thing by Sarah Rastresen, which I bought for 2025. This was kind of pricey, y'all, but I think it's worth it. I haven't been using it a lot as far as like writing in it, but I have been referencing it a lot. So this is Sarah Rastresen put together a 2025 spiritual planner. And this is a harmonization between tarot. It's a tarot planner. It is a witchy planner and it is a Christian planner all together, which is kind of incredible. And I got it because I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I wanted to not promote it. What am I trying to say? I wanted to support it. So she has a holiday and celebration calendar, and this has the Sabbats as well as the liturgical year blended together, which is so incredible. So she's got Beltane next to the Feast of the Ascension. We've got common Christian prayers in here, but then she has the Rosary in here. She has the Wheel of the Year and the liturgical year side by side so you can see how they maybe overlap. This is an independently published thing, so you have to get it. I think you can get it from Amazon. I think the spiral bound version I had to order from her website. There is, can Christians use astrology? If so, how does it work? There's a bunch of stuff on astrology here. There is a place for you to put in your chart. I thought this was the coolest thing. There's tarot card meanings in here. Then there is a place for you to put your 2025 year ahead spread. But then the way that it's mostly structured throughout is that, so at the beginning, okay, for example, you have March. So there'll be a monthly place where you can do a spread, a calendar, which shows you, of course, the moons, the Ash Wednesday, Ember Day. I'd have to look up, it's in here what it is, I'm sure. And then spring equinox, and then we have the solar eclipse, but then we would also have like Easter, etc., etc. And this is great because you have spring holidays, Easter next to Ostara. You have spring festival meditation. There's an Easter Sunday prayer, spring equinox prayer where you can write your own, a festival plan, a scripture reflection. It's got recommended readings for Easter Sunday from the Bible. Next to, and it tells you can literally mark, this year I'm celebrating Easter or spring equinox, and you can check either or both and who you're celebrating with. It's actually really freaking cool that this just exists. And this is her first year doing it, as far as I know. Then you get a card of the week along with a weekly prayer, some suggested readings for a weekly meditation from the Bible if you want, and then questions about how those readings made you feel. There's always Old Testament, New Testament, and Gospel. There was information here on Ash Wednesday, which has already passed. That was on March 5th, which, by the way, Ash Wednesday is the witchiest. It was so witchy. I did my own little version of Ash Wednesday, and it was like the witchiest ritual. It was no different than any other witchy ritual I've ever done in my life. It was amazing. So freaking cool. And so, yeah, it does like this the whole time. And then there's also like, here's a full moon spread for the Virgo worm moon. Like, so this very much blends the two really beautifully. And so I really have been enjoying, I'm not one to like put my tarot spreads in something like this, but it's got so much information. And this is Sarah Raz Treason, Stardust. So it's this same person, Sarah Raz Treason. And this is just called the Spiritual Planner. Does she not have like a cover page? Okay, there's no cover page. But anyways, it's just called the Spiritual Planner. And there's a hardcover, soft cover, and spiral bound version. I think you can get the hardcover or the soft cover on Amazon. Yeah. So these two have been great. I have to make piles. Tarot, more tarot stuff. My favorite book harmonizing the two is this book, The Contemplative Tarot. So this is by Brittany Muller. It's really beautiful. Yeah. I actually dip into this book once a month with my envelope readings because I am using, I threw my mouse on the ground. Oh no. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pull an old envelope. Here's my March full moon reading. No, that's full moon. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. For my full moon readings, I am using the Tarot of the Old Path. What's this called? Old Style Tarot. I think it's called Old Style Tarot. I really like this deck because it seems to show God in a bunch of the cards, like a stereotypical, like look like God in a bunch of the cards. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's how it looks to me. And so I have a card from there along with Mysteries of Mary and the Mysteries of the Black Madonna. And then I will read from this book when I pull my card. And this is really great because it's got quotes from the Bible. It's got a kind of a Christian take on the card. And then some journaling reflections that I think are really beautiful. And I have not yet encountered anything that feels like it is not in line with my reconstructed faith. So I really like that a lot. I also picked up, and this one we're mad about it at this point, but I haven't finished it. So this is the other book. This just came out. And this is called The Bible and the Tarot. I'm only partway into it. It's got a very casual writing style that I don't know that I love. And this is one person. What is his deal? He's like a priest, I think, or I don't know the right terms, y'all. Not a priest, a pastor? Oh, no, priest, as an Episcopal priest. My colleague said tarot is bad business, my friend. It's nice hearing from an Episcopal, that's how you say that. He's an Episcopal priest, and he does talk about his take on the tarot. and how his colleagues don't necessarily get it, which makes sense. So I really liked the intro. And then he gets into like a little bit more, and then he breaks down, he has like a write-up for every major arcana card, which is what I'm just getting into. Something interesting that he does do, which I kind of think is fun, is for every card, he has a quick read of the card and artistic inspiration. And that, so basically he uses a different tarot deck for each major arcana. Night, Lisa. Thanks for hanging out. So like in the Strength card, he's referencing the Navigator Tarot of the Mystic Sea. But like in the Devil card, he's referencing the Rider-Waite-Smith. And in the Star card, he's referencing the Alchemical Tarot by Robert Place. Like you can tell this guy is a collector, right? We can tell. We know you, Gil. We see you. So I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it. I'm new to it. Like I said, sometimes the tone feels almost a little too casual. He mentions that Gil, we got to talk, okay? Because he mentions he recommends going to YouTube if you want to see what a deck looks like before you buy it. But he's like, listen, I like the flip throughs where they don't tell you about their impressions of the cards the whole way through. And while that's a totally valid take, I did take it a little personally. And I'm joking, but like, it's funny. Anyways, it was kind of weird to read in a book somebody referencing YouTube to look for decks. I don't know. It's like there's weird places where I forget that YouTube is like not new anymore because it's still relatively new to me, I guess. Anyways, these are great. This one is so good though. If you just want a good, like meaty interpretation and journal prompts that have that more Christian take, I guess. I'm using the term Christian always to refer to my reconstructed Christianity, I guess. Yes, so many Christians think that tarot is evil. It's super interesting because obviously the Rider-Waite-Smith is packed full of Christian mysticism and Hermeticism and Gnosticism, and like it's all in there. But also, if you work with the Rider-Waite-Smith, like it's a no-brainer. I 100% agree with you, Emma. I totally agree. Religion is often about, I think, about control and not just from the top down. Sometimes it's also about people just want to be told how to live and they don't want to take personal responsibility. That's not easy. And so they just want to go to the Bible and be like, what does the Bible say to do? I'm going to do that. And it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's right though. It just means it's easy. Anyways, these are really, really great. I've kind of skipped around, but the book that I actually very, very first started with on this whole journey was this one. It was the one that felt the least scary to me. And I knew that Marcus had pissed off some evangelicals. He was a little too progressive for some of them. And I was like, okay, he's my dude. So I picked this up and I'm so glad I did. It was just an Amazon research. I found it myself. And it literally, the subtitle is Taking the Bible Seriously, but not literally. I haven't finished this actually because I've been reading it. It's kind of ordered to line up with reading the Bible kind of chronologically, I guess. So I've been reading through the sections as I'm in the sections. Like, for example, he talks about reading the history books. Well, the history books, there's quite a few history books in the Bible, so I'm still there. I'm not quite to the prophets yet, actually. So I have read some of the stuff about the prophets. But he's actually where I first learned about the two different creation stories in Genesis. There's the P story and the J story. And I've highlighted a ton of stuff in here. He's very well researched. But one of the first things he starts off with is, without using the word hermeneutics, he talks about how we read the Bible through a certain lens, right? Hi, Kamala. So yeah, he talks about how there are different lenses. And one of the things he says early on, oh yeah, this is great. I'm just going to read a couple quotes from this book so you can see what you think. He says, most Christians who think of the Bible as both divine and human would say that the 10 Commandments are among the parts that come from God. But a moment's reflection suggests that the 10 Commandments are also a human product. They are written from a male point of view. For example, they prohibit coveting your neighbor's wife, but say nothing about coveting your neighbor's husband. Moreover, the commandments against stealing, adultery, murder, bearing false witness, and so forth are simply rules that make it possible for humans to live together in community. It is all a human product, though generated in response to God. As such, it contains ancient Israel's perceptions and misperceptions of what life with God involves, just as it contains the early Christians' movements, perceptions, and misperceptions. And this is the most important thing. There is no such thing as a non-interpretive reading of the Bible. This is so important. Unless our reading consists simply of making sounds in the air. As we read the Bible, then, we should ask not what is God saying, but what is the ancient author or community saying? And I wrote, this is important, because when you hear really dogmatic folk talk about the inerrancy of the Bible, first of all, that's BS, because it was written by humans. It can't be inerrant. Okay. It just can't. I'm sorry. You can't convince me that it is. But when you hear that, you hear, oh, this is, and they talk about it as the word of God. Well, it is the word of people who were impacted by a God. That does not mean that it is the word of God, literal word. Like, that's not how it is. This is people's perceptions of God. And when you listen to people like John Shelby Spong talk, and Marcus J. Borg and these other authors, you realize that the whole freaking point, I think, the whole point of Jesus showing up in the first place was like, guys, you're getting it all wrong. Here, let me show you what God is like. Let me show you, because you're not getting it. Y'all, it's not about war and conquest and like who's ruling who. Like, let's get a handle on this, okay? I'm going to give you a living example that you can follow. And anyways, I have feels about this stuff because I just have been feeling so validated. I cannot tell you how incredible it is to realize so much of the things that I believed when I was like 12 were not wrong. I just wasn't listening to the right people. Anyways, okay, sorry. I said we were on a tarot break and I keep side questing. Okay, another tarot thing. I did pick this up. Well, I picked this up. I was gifted this. Funny story about this. I wonder if this is one of the other things that planted a seed. You know how I said, like, I'm not sure why I started to get curious about all this stuff. I wonder if part of it, like, I know I read Mary Magdalene Revealed, which is also in my stack, which is incredible, by the way. I read that back in 2020, 2021. But also this creator reached out to me to see if I would review this deck. And I was like, no, man, not for me. Dude, I'm pagan. I'm a witch. What are you talking about? And so I actually told the creator to contact a friend of mine who I knew did follow this faith. And I was like, reach out to her. She'll probably do a great job. So they did. And she got it. And then they came out with a second edition and they reached out to her to give her the second edition, but she had already bonded to her first edition. And by this point I was down the rabbit hole and she's like, do you want my second edition? I was like, yeah, kind of do though now. Actually, kind of, yeah. It is actually super well done. The book I bought on Amazon. It's a little bit of it's really helpful, actually. The one downside that I had to reconcile myself with is that this book is AI. However, and we're going to all have feels about that one way or another. That's cool. You guys can have your feels. We're not going to do the whole debate thing, but I will just simply say, I was like, oh, how do I feel about a God-based deck that's AI? That feels kind of weird. But I do think they did a pretty good job with selecting imagery. It's better in the second edition. The first edition had a couple uncanny valley that really threw me. But I'm willing to look past it for the substance of it because I think it's really well done. And I think that the imagery seems really well done. I like that the way this is made is every card has the title. So it's traditional tarot, but it has who or what is being depicted on the card. So here for the high priest or the Hierophant, we have Aaron, brother of Moses. For the 6 of feathers, which is the 6 of swords, we have Ruth. I always get these two mixed up. Who's the other girl? Ruth and Boaz is the husband. Ruth and nobody knows. It's me. Her daughter-in-law, Ruth and Ruth's daughter-in-law. Anyways, you think I hadn't read the book? I totally read the book. Anyway, and they actually line up really well with the meanings of the tarot. So this is really cool. I have really enjoyed this. It is we're a little bit white up in here, like whiter than we should be for what we know about the culture, for sure. Naomi, thank you so much, Kristen. But I really love the associations. There is a couple places where we get a little bit of it's going to be hard to have anybody do real good in this. I should say it's hard to find things where people have done real good in this. I have to say, I do like that about the show The Chosen. But some of these images, I'm like, well, it's showing the soul, but then the AI made this. Like, how do I feel about that? It's that weird with me initially, but I really like pulling cards from this and then referencing these stories. And it's really cool because as with a fandom deck, best way I know how to explain this, this is like a Bible fandom deck. Okay. It takes the tarot and then it overlays what the creators know of the Bible and Bible stories and links the two together. Y'all are the best. Thank you for knowing the name. But I actually really like it, and I have not found, like, I love this with Jacob's dream at Bethel. This is amazing with the angels walking up and down the stairs. I do think that that AI was able to do some really beautiful imaginings of these scenes, which I think is great. So on that hand, I do really like it. And the expanded book is, I think, a must if you do decide to pick this up, because it gives you the verse here, which is a wonderful, and then a bit of a summary of what is being shown in the card and which chunk. Anyways, lots of good stuff. And then there's meanings and such. I keep this in my little Bible study bag, and I like to pull cards from it occasionally, usually on Sundays, just for funsies. And yeah, okay. And then I also have been working with, and I talk about this in my next monthly deck reviews, I think, but this is my other one, believe it or not, that I've been using in this context, because what I started to discover early in my studies is that it seems to me that when you look for the divine feminine in the Bible, one of the places that you will find her, if you're open to it, is in nature, the earth, any place where we are experiencing. When we think of Asherah, Asherah was worshipped with poles, sometimes trees or groves. Women sitting under trees is significant. Obviously, we have Deborah, one of the prophets, shows up under a tree, used to sit under a tree and give her prophecies. Okay. Yeah, there's no magic in the Bible. Okay. All right. Anyways, I really love the tarot of her. I pull from this deck when I want to tap into that divine feminine Mother Earth energy. And I think it just does such a beautiful job. But there's nothing Bible connected at all about this deck. But there is to me. Like, I pull from this deck every Sunday as part of my practice. And this is a way that when I'm diving into the Bible, I keep connected to the divine feminine, because the two are interwoven. Who has a cold heart? What? Do I have the Oracle deck by the author of Mary Magdalene Revealed? I used to have the Divine Feminine Oracle, traded that a long time ago away. I have seen her Mary Magdalene Oracle and have considered picking it up, but I haven't yet. I'm also not deep diving into the New Testament technically yet, although I'm watching The Chosen, which is kind of between that and like some of my reading, I'm still ending up in the New Testament anyways. I swear I'm trying to read chronologically. It's just real hard not to like bounce around. Why do you have a cold, unfeeling heart? Why did you say that? You do not. What are you talking about? My hesitation in making this a series is one of the things I literally have on my paper is that my content isn't changing. Where did I write that? I basically said my content isn't really changing, but as I reference things in passing, I want to have something I can point people to be like, hey, this is what I'm about. Okay, resources. So helpful scholars, Marcus J. Borg. He's a great Bible scholar, really, really good stuff. I also have his book, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, that I plan to read alongside the New Testament when I get there in my study. But this is great for Old Testament. I don't think he even gets into New Testament in here. He might. Oh, he does. He gets into the New Testament in here, but his other book is like Jesus specific. So really great. Love this. I want to talk about divine feminine side questing, but before I do that, okay, I also read this book. This is Rachel Held Evans. The book is called Inspired, and Slaying Giants, Walking on Water, and Loving the Bible Again. This is highly critical of the Bible and of religion, and yet Rachel has a deeply held faith, and it's really beautiful. She writes much more poetically, and it's really a beautiful, inspiring read, not to have it too better on the nose. But I have been watching The Chosen and really enjoying it. In fact, I'm actually rewatching it right now, seasons 1 through 4. I tend to watch it at bedtime and like fall asleep to it. It's very comforting. I'm not a speed reader, but y'all, I've been in this, like deep diving into this since like for almost a year now. And just, I've got it all bottled up. So I'm like sharing everything. You're welcome. This live stream is not going to be super watch backable, but at least the first part, I got all the really important stuff out in the first part. So, nobody has to stick around for all of my bazillion resources. Oh yeah, here's the other Marcus J. Borg book, but I haven't read this yet. So this is quite thin, but this is Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. So because it's by Marcus J. Borg, I know it's going to be good. So I'm excited about that when I get there. I picked this up on a whim. This is kind of silly, but I'm still kind of glad I got it. But this is called, I'll show you that in a second. I want to talk about all the divine feminine stuff together. Okay, the last two, again, these I've not read these yet, but I picked these up as part of my deconstruction talk. But this is the first book. I did a bunch of research, and this is the one that I settled on. This is called That All Shall Be Saved, Heaven, Hell, and Universal Salvation. This is by David Bentley Hart, and he is a New Testament translator. Something I've definitely been learning is I like reading books by people who either have worked on translations or are like longtime biblical scholars. I don't always find it useful to read from people who have an interest in the subject but aren't necessarily educated in the subject. That sounds really judgy pants. It's just that I want what I'm reading to be sound. Oh my God. The first thing I'm doing tomorrow is watching this back for real? Okay. Alrighty. Cool. I haven't had a single negative comment. I just realized you all are amazing. Thank you so much. Anyways, so I'm excited about this. It does look a little bit dense, not surprised, but the back says, in this momentous book, David Bentley Hart makes the case that nearly 2 millennia of dogmatic tradition have misled readers on the crucial matter of universal salvation. On the basis of the earliest Christian writings, theological tradition, scripture, and logic, Hart argues that if God is the good creator of all, he is the savior of all without fail. Thank you very freaking much. I knew it. Fuck. And this one looks like it's going to be really hard to read. In fairness, I picked it up because it was like on sale for like $4 on Amazon, and it was in my area of interest. So this is called Out of the Embers, Bradley Jersak, Faith After the Great Deconstruction. I was just excited that it was a deconstruction book. I have not read this one yet. I have not read this one yet. I peeked at this one and I was like, oh God, it does read. There's a lot of talk in here about like Jung and Nietzsche, and there's Christian agnosticism, the 7 sleepers of deconstruction. This has got a heavy psychological bent. Oh, he's quoting the NRSV translation, so that's promising. This is why I say that if you have a little bit of interest in this, the Universal Christ dips into all of these topics. So I feel like I could have, like I said, saved a lot of money if I'd have just started with the Universal Christ, but I do read a lot. It's one of the reasons why I had to make space for this, because I read fiction sometimes, but I also like to read this stuff. Okay, let's talk about the Divine Feminine side questing, because holy cow, have I had so much fun. Oh God, one of my books is super buried. Oh no, there it is. Okay. So we have to talk about this. So Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson is a book that breaks down and gives commentary on Mary's gospel, of which unfortunately there are just, oh, I'm sorry, Salima, I'll bring it back up. It's called The Tarot of Her. It's a tarot deck. I'm so sorry. It is currently, I think, technically, briefly and temporarily out of print. I think the creators are working on another edition to go on Kickstarter. So look up Tarot of Her. It is a tarot deck. It's round, and it's based literally on Mother Nature, on Gaia, on like the concept of Mother Nature. But it's coming back, y'all. It's coming back. It's coming back. Okay. Okay. Mary Magdalene Revealed. So the problem with Mary's gospel is there's only little teeny bits. So she does quote the bits and then she writes commentary on them. But it's really beautiful, and it really gives an entirely different take on the New Testament and on the Gospels. So this is really incredible. Artie says, I already have no shelf control, so this is super enabling. And I can only recommend so many of these, because some of these I'm into. I tend to be reading 3 or 4 at a time. Hi, Michelle. Remember the Matrix when Neo basically downloads all the programs, lies down, plugs in, and minutes later, I know karate? I think Lisa does that with, I think maybe a little bit. I wish it was passive. If I could do it while I slept, that'd be amazing. But keep in mind, y'all, I am literally laying on you resources from almost a year stacked up all at once. So it's a lot. Oh, sorry. Also, before I forget, I know this is all out of order and I'm so sorry. Dan McClellan. So he is highly critical. So if you're looking for historical critical, like McClellan is your dude, okay? He is at McClellan. Let me type this one in the chat. At McClellan. That's how you find him on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, etc. He cross-posts his content from TikTok, I think, onto Instagram and YouTube Shorts. I don't go on TikTok, but I pretty much watch him on YouTube Shorts and Instagram Shorts all the time. He is, like I said, highly critical, and his main premise for his content is he does, I guess, the TikTok version of VRs to people who say problematic things about Christianity and religion in the Bible, and then he corrects it. He is, so you know, he did Bible translation work for the Mormon Church, and I believe is technically a Mormon, and has done that for years. He worked for the Mormon Church for a long time, but he is highly critical of the Bible, highly researched, and very, very quick to quote his sources. He has written theses. He's like very, very intelligent. He is heavy-handed with his critique, but it's really, really great when you hear him talk about queerness, when you hear him talk about like inclusion, and basically when he unpacks some of the bullshit people say that is in the Bible that really isn't, and he like breaks it down historically. He's talked about Asherah. He's talked about like all kinds of stuff. He will call out the BS like nobody's business. And he has been really helpful to me. Sometimes I'm not in the mood and I'm like, oh, yeah, done with me. It's like, am I back? Okay. It froze on my end. Anyways, sometimes I'm not in the mood because he's pretty intense. Welcome to the Unicorn Fam, Mandy. Anyways, he's great, but he's a lot. But his stuff is very digestible. I also really like Bart Ehrman, Ehrman, as another scholar that I like listening to. One of my favorites is actually Pete Enns, Enns. Pete Enns is one of the co-hosts of the Bible for Normal People podcast, which is an incredible podcast. Highly recommend. He has had on his podcast, I'm pretty sure he had Richard Rohr. I'm pretty sure, God, he's had everybody. He's had Rachel Held Evans, I think he had her. He's had Jewish scholars and Christian scholars, and his first 20, 30 episodes are just jam-packed of so much good stuff. In fact, some of these books came about because of the Bible for Normal People podcast. So if you are interested, his stuff is amazing. So incredible. So, and he has a book that I have on my Kindle called, let me look it up, but I'm halfway into it. I hop around a little bit in case you can't tell. Pete Enns' book on Bible is called The Bible Tells Me So. No, that's not the one I got. He does have a book called The Bible Tells Me So, but I haven't read that one. I think that one's geared towards Christians, like helping them deconstruct. I got the one called How the Bible Actually Works, in which I explain how an ancient, ambiguous, and diverse book leads us to wisdom rather than answers, and why that's great news. So it's kind of a long subtitle, but that is called How the Bible Actually Works by Pete Enns, and that's really good. He actually has a bunch of book by book breakdowns. Like he does this in his series too. He'll have an episode on his podcast called Ruining Genesis or something. And he's literally like breaking it down and like demystifying it. He's where I first heard about the monotheism versus monolatry. He's very approachable, his voice, and he's got a co-host and they're just great together. Oh my God, welcome to the Unicorn Fam, Lisa. Welcome. Another Lisa. We can never have too many, you know. Giza Vermes. I don't know that one. Let me Google that one. Let me just add it to my list. Vermes. Okay. So back to divine feminine stuff. Sorry, I just keep getting squirrely. So anyways, Mary Magdalene Revealed, really beautiful. And if you are interested in work with Mary Magdalene, I think this is there's no better place to start. So love this. I got a copy. I had rehomed my copy a long time ago. So I purchased a new one last August or September, I think, so that I'd have one to revisit when I get to the New Testament, because it was so moving to me. But I think there's things like this that planted seeds a long time ago. I think this has been percolating for me for like 5 years, if I'm being like honest. I just was kind of like, no. And then I said yes. Anyways, so that's really good. This book is just for fun, because it turns out it's mostly just quoting Proverbs, basically, and other things from the Bible. But it is called The Divine Feminine in Biblical Wisdom Literature, and it's annotated and explained. So these are basically, this is a translation and annotation by Rabbi, oh my God, you guys, I'm sorry. I know how to read, I promise. Rabbi Rami Shapiro, forward by Reverend Cynthia Borjalt, PhD. And so basically, like, there'll be a quote, like, this is God's breath from the Wisdom of Jesus Ben Sirach, which is a apocryphal text. It says, I am the breath of the Most High, blanketing the earth like mist, filling the sky like towering clouds. I encompass distant galaxies and walk the innermost abyss, over crest and trough, over sea and land, over every people and nation I hold sway. And then if you go to the back, I think it is, or is it on this side? I can't remember. I got to remember how it works. But anyways, there's commentary. I just can't remember if this commentary is for this passage or if it's on the back. Hi, Danny. Thanks for popping in. We're talking Bible shit for like 2.5 hours. Hi. Danny was such a mainstay for me in the beginning of this for me. She like has listened to me talk about the Bible so much. She's been amazing. The best. So yeah, this is cute. And I kind of thought this might be really nice for when I get towards later on. I'm going to probably use this to highlight certain passages in my inspiration Bible I showed you earlier, because it's going to call out a lot of those divine feminine references. And I think that's really great. So yeah, really excited about that. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying this. I love that so much. I wasn't sure, how, I mean, I knew you guys are going to be nice, but like, I don't know. I didn't want to come across like I'm trying to tell anybody else what to think. I'm just excited to share what I've been studying and reading and stuff. Okay, the other book I'm reading now, this is my current, well, I'm actually reading 2 books about this now, but When God Had a Wife. This is by Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince. This is, I would say, arguably one of the most popular books for talking about Asherah and the sacred feminine in general within the Judeo-Christian tradition. So I am about, a third of the way through right now. I have a tendency to read something and then want to go highlight stuff in the Bible and make notes and do my own side studies. So books like this, I get a little ways into and then have to pause and then come back and then pause and then come back. But I'm currently sort of reading this, and I'm also reading this book, which is super skinny and tiny. So if you're looking for like just a little introductory read, I can't give you a review yet, but I can say that the reviews I did find called it both easy to read and well researched, which is not always one thing I've been avoiding for the most part. I let myself have one deck, but I've been kind of avoiding the new agey Christiany stuff, not because I have any problem with it, like as like it's bad or something. It's because I want to avoid too much of other people's UPG, other people's unverified personal gnosis. I want to like dip into scholarly sources and like make up my own mind. I don't want somebody else telling me, well, this is what it all means. I did get a Jesus deck of the Christ Consciousness Oracle, which I've been using in my bedtime polls, and it's lovely, but it's one of those things where it's totally somebody else's unverified personal gnosis. It's nice. I like it, but like, it's not where I'm putting my energy and money and stuff. I'm putting it into things like this that are researched and that I can like geek out on. Anyways, this is really nice. This is called The Hidden Goddess, The Quest for the Divine Feminine in the Judeo-Christian Tradition, from Asherah to Mary Magdalene. I have to agree, I'm only 13 pages in, and it is written really beautifully. And yet there is a wonderful annotation list with specific call outs to verses in the Bible or to other authors and their work. So it's very well annotated, and there is an incredible bibliography. I love digging into bibliographies. Like the Discovering Christian Witchcraft book is so good for the bibliography alone. So yeah, this is amazing. So I'm reading these 2 kind of right now. These are like my current like on the go reads. But my beefiest one, and this was, y'all, this was pricey. I did a bunch of research and found this, and I was like, I have to have it, but it was expensive. I think it was like $50 or $60. It was expensive, but it's so cool. And I'm only like, you can see, I'm only that far into it, and this has transformed some of my stuff. When I talked about, this is called The Great Lady, Restoring Her Story. It's by Margaret Barker, who is, I believe, Jewish. Yes. Margaret Barker is the originator of Temple Theology, the originator of Temple Theology, is a former president of the Society for Old Testament Study and a prolific author specializing in reconstructing the background of New Testament thought in the Hebrew Bible and early Judaism. So the thing about this book is that it is incredibly dense. But this is one of those books where I read a couple pages and then I have to go like make notes in my Bible for like the next like 3 weeks. And then I can come back and read another couple pages. She is where I first got the information about El Shaddai and started digging into it. And she talks a lot about where she believes, now she's very clear on what is like factual versus what is her belief based on her studies and her background. But she calls out some potential mistranslations. I'll give you one for example, so you kind of get the vibe. So in Amos 8:14, she says, sin of, so this is an example of hiding the great lady's name, Ashratah. So she says Ashratah is one of the names of basically Asherah. I think it's the same kind of idea. So she said in this is a verse from Amos 8:14, and she says the sin of Samaria. So sin of, and she tells us how it was written, and she gives the letters. It's like SML or SMT, it looks like, but this has been changed from SRT, Ashratah. So sometimes what she's calling out is where a slight difference in how a letter is logged from one scribe to another can change the entire context of the word. And based on the surrounding context of that phrase or that section of the Bible, she's kind of saying, this is one of the areas I think that the goddess was basically written out of the Bible. And it would have been a very easy change to make that would have been almost undetectable. And that's kind of what she talks about a little bit. But she says here, the scribes simply changed the R to an M and so removed the great lady from the text, as well as giving their opinion of her. She was the sin of Samaria, not their great lady. And I've made a note that in the NRSV UE, it does say Ashima of Samaria, not sin, which is very interesting because it gives credence to the fact that a later translation did correct this error, right? And so there's things like that I found in here. Yeah, here it is. Here's an example. Remember earlier when I said that sometimes you'll see a reference to El Shaddai, which is that breasted God reference. And in the Bible, it's translated as Lord Almighty or God Almighty. And yet it's very clear you're talking about like two. Here's an example. This is from Genesis 49:25. By the God of your father who will help you, comma, by El Shaddai who will bless you. With the blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. Now, reading that and seeing how it's laid out, right? By the God of your father who will help you, by El Shaddai who will bless you. That sounds to me like two different energies. This was your master. I just spit on my computer. I got so excited. This was your master's thesis? Yeah, amazing. So this is incredible to me. And so I started reading these things and I would go to this section of the Bible. Here's where El Shaddai shows up. She protected Abram, renamed him Abraham. That's the naming I was telling you about. And then promised him many descendants. She made a covenant with him to give him the land of Canaan. That's in Genesis 17. When Isaac blesses his son, as Jacob left home, he prayed for her blessing upon him and he would have many children and return to the land. This is again where El Shaddai is referenced in a very motherly tone, as if it's almost like the goddess. Like we're asking for a blessing from God and a blessing from the goddess. It's totally incredible. And when you, so this book, even though, like I said, I'm literally, what am I? 23 pages in, the amount of times I've had to stop and go back and find the text and make a note in the text. I literally have TGL as an annotation in my study Bible for whenever I reference a great lady reference. So this book, while very worthwhile, but it's dense. It's not the kind of thing I'm like going to sit there and like read cover to cover. I'm going to be dipping in and dipping out for probably years. There's Isaiah, I'm not there. First Kings, I'm not there. So like as I get further along, I'll be able to go back into some of these resources and like pull out more and more and more and more and more. So yeah, so many resources. Did I cover like all of my resources at this point? Not, I probably missed plenty. This is a great point for me to just pause and take a breath and come back up to full screen and also just check in with you all and see, because I haven't really been like staring at the chat because I just had so much I wanted to get out of me, but I would love to touch base, answer questions if you all have them. And then I'll do a bit of a recap before I close out the stream to like remind people where I'm at. Yeah. But based on all of this, do y'all have any questions about where I stand on anything or like where I'm headed or like what the point of this is for me? And like, I don't know, do you feel, if you were nervous about any of my prior references, do you feel more comfortable with all of this? Yeah. Oh, 95. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, honey. It was expensive. It's worth it. I don't think I paid $95 for it though. I might have. I don't think so, but maybe. It was early on and I was real excited to find it. Milo says, thank you so much for doing this stream. I've been trying to deconstruct and deal with my religious trauma for a while and had no idea where to start. Oh, I'm so glad. Lilith is still new for me. A lot of my Lilith work so far has been that UPG area where I'm kind of, I have the vibe that I think Lilith may have been the serpent. I think there's a lot of interesting, I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. Peggy says we'll talk later. Hey, it was while I was buying study Bibles. Like I spent more collectively on study Bibles. So like you're fine. You're fine. So I don't have any specific Lilith resources yet, because for me, she's not explicitly called out right now, but yes. Okay, this is a really good question. Aspasia says, what is the point of this for you with alternative spiritual beliefs that are inclusive? What do you mean? I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. I can, as far as like the second part, the first part, what the point of it is. I don't know that I really circled back to that. I will say this. I have always had a very strong feeling of connection to this way of looking at deity. I have tried to form other very specific and personal relationships with other deities. Some have lasted 6 months, a year maybe. And none of them have felt like home to me in this way. Some have felt comfortable, some have felt comforting. I've gotten something out of those relationships, but for me, this is about relationship. And so the relationship that I had growing up and the relationship that I feel like I have now is exactly the same. And so where I feel like this has brought me is home again to something that I feel like got taken from me, if I'm being really honest. And I feel like it got taken from me by religion. And I feel like I've got it again. And I think that's really incredible. I also feel very comfortable and confident in saying that I don't think it ever left me. I think I just left it, if I'm being honest. And I think it's been present the entire time in various forms. I have a very, very strong belief that the presence of God or faith in my life has never really changed. It's changed face, it's changed what it looks like, but it's always the same energy. And I think it's never abandoned me and never not been there. I don't know how else to describe that. It, I don't know how else to describe that. Just that the relationship is at the heart of it for me. And what I was looking for, I think initially, and this wasn't that relationship, that snuck up on me again. But I would say that initially I was just looking to understand and to maybe heal some of my old religious trauma. Excuse me. And so I think that's what I would say. To me, I guess initially it didn't feel any different than deciding to work with Aphrodite or Astarte or Aryan Rod or any of these other entities that I've worked with as faces of deity, because to me, they're all the same. It's just, I guess my belief is that deity will, if you believe in deity, if you've always had faith in some sort of like higher power, then it's going to be present for you in your life in whatever way is most easily accepted and digestible by you in that moment. And so I don't think anything else has changed. I think how I'm looking at it has shifted, but only shifted back to what it was before. And it may shift again. This is the part I want to be really clear about. And I said this at the beginning. For all I know, I'm going to go through all of this. And like in a year from now, I'll be talking about my relationship with, I don't know, the goddess Gaia or Hades and Persephone. I don't know. It could shift again in that way. The face of it could shift, but I don't think the heart of it will ever really shift. I think it's always been the same for me. I don't know if that actually clarifies your question. For me, I have no room for a spirituality that is non-inclusive. So this is an alternative spiritual belief that is inclusive. That's what the reconstruction is all about for me. Deconstruction / reconstruction is making sure that whatever spiritual path I'm following, it remains inclusive. And the best way I know how to put this is that I have no interest in any belief structure or spiritual path that doesn't have room for everybody at the table. If there's not room for everybody at the table, then my spiritual path shifts to accommodate everybody being at the table. So my version of this, everybody has room at the table. There's literally no difference, except for that instead of calling it Aphrodite or whatever, I'm going to call it Jesus or God. But like, to me, it's the same. Or the goddess or Asherah or Mary, or you know what I mean? I don't know if that answered your question. And if it's not getting at the heart of what you were asking, please feel free to ask in a more blunt way if that's easier, and I will do my best to answer. I have seen the shadow work version of the biblical tarot. However, it looked like just a black and white version. Is there anything else different? Did I miss the differences? I want to make sure I get the question. No, I know this part. But I think there's more about that. I think there's more context to that story. Let's see. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Laurel. That really, really means a lot to me. Interesting. The serpent was not actually a snake initially. 4 was symbolized by the snake only after the fact. I think I heard that in some of the older art, it was like had legs or something. Like it was a different kind of creature. Wait, would have had to have been because the whole crawling on the belly after the fact. I can't remember, but I think I've heard a tidbit about this. Would you have any resources on the biblical vision of the devil or Satan? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get into hell and the devil. The Universal Christ does a really beautiful job of this. In the Bible, the only real mention of Satan is of the accuser. It shows up in the book of Job. It may show up later on in the New Testament as things get reworked and reimagined, but the accuser, Richard Rohr's take from the Universal Christ really lines up with me. The way Richard Rohr puts it, in fact, I might be able to even find the passage because I highlighted it. He basically says the voice within you that leads you in the direction of acceptance, love, wholeness, healing, etc., is always going to be the voice of God in whatever way you want to see that, the universe, higher power, higher self, however you view that energy, right? And Richard Rohr even makes it very clear. He's like, you don't even have to call it God. It doesn't matter. Like if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. And he talks about how the voice of shame and the voice that tells you you're not good enough, the negative voice in your head, that's the accuser. It's not a disembodied creature that is like speaking to you. It is literally like your own negative impulse towards yourself, which I thought was a very, very interesting take. And I'm probably summarizing it very, very poorly. Here it is. Aha. If a voice comes from accusation and leads to accusation, it is quite simply the voice of the accuser, which is the literal meaning of the biblical word Satan. Because Richard Rohr also calls out the exclusionary transactional bullshit that comes from like really dogmatic religion. Shaming, accusing, or blaming is simply not how God talks. It is how we talk. God is supremely nonviolent, and I've learned that from the saints and mystics that I have read and met and heard about. That many holy people cannot be wrong. So accusations, blame, and shame are the language of the accuser, is what I wrote in my copy of the book. So that's one way to look at it. I do not believe in the devil. I do not believe in Satan. I never have. I don't think we can externalize the good and the bad in our lives. I think that we make choices, and I think we experience good and bad as a consequence. There's a lot of overlap between my view of a lot of these like things I've been deconstructing and the tarot. Like I watched an entire talk that made so much sense about what judgment is all about. Okay, Hello Tarot asks, what part of this whole quest that you're on has given you the most, I love that you called it a quest because that's how it feels, has given you the most safety, love, and the reason why you keep digging into this even further? That is an easy answer for me. It is John Shelby Spong. I probably watched about 7 hours of him talking, even though he was saying a lot of the same stuff over and over again, because I had never heard a person with faith speak with such conviction about how wrong the church has gotten it and why it's wrong and how it's not biblically sound. He made me feel incredibly safe, incredibly welcomed, and not in a toxic, we're welcoming you in spite of the fact that you're gay kind of way, but like in an actually, like, I'm actually a good human kind of way. And like, so is everybody else. And like original sin is bullshit. Like he doesn't say it like that because he's like a bishop and stuff. Unfortunately, rest in peace. I think he's no longer with us, but his talks, I cannot tell you how many people, unfortunately, had to hear me be like, please go listen to him and then tell me what you think, because the way that I cried, I'd never had anything made me feel so safe before ever. But not only that, it's also been realizing as I'm reading the text and dipping into the Bible can be very challenging to read because there's a lot of really dark stuff in there. I'm not going to pretend that there's not. 100% there is. And what's been really healing for me, though, is the recognition and understanding, like with resources like the Cultural Context Bible, where I recognize that so much of the Bible was written by people to reflect the time they were living in. One of the things that is really pointed out quite clearly in Marcus J. Borg's book, Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, as well as in the Cultural Context Bible, is that there are different literature types within the books of the Bible. And some of the books of the Bible, some of the most challenging, are resistance literature. They were books that were written about these really violent conquests that God would instruct the people to go do. These conquests were written about at a time when the people that were writing these stories were under persecution and under, what is the word I'm looking for? Other people's rule, right? They were under Egyptian persecution. It's not persecution. There's another word. I can't remember the name of the word. And my chat scrolled up, so I won't see it if you call it out, but because I'm going through questions, but they were writing the things they couldn't say to the people that had power over them. So they were writing about their strong and powerful God who helps them take over nations because it helped them at a time that they were feeling oppressed. They were under oppression. I guess that's the best word I can think of at the time. So resistance literature is a type of literature that has been used throughout history by various people groups who are under somebody else's thumb. And they write these stories as a way of coping with what they're going through because they can't overthrow the person that is over them. And that is one lens, just one example of one lens that has helped me to unpack and read things through a lens of, I'm not reading this as God actually told them to go do this stuff. I'm reading this as like, they're trying to comfort themselves by the fact that they have this super powerful God who's going to help them take over and do all this stuff. And sure, lots and lots of bad things have been done in the name of the Bible, but that's people doing bad things. That is not God doing bad things. And so I just have to kind of put it in its place. And that's been really helpful. I don't know if I feel like I tangented, but I don't know if I answered your question. But if I was to say the one thing, the one resource, it would be listening to John Shelby Spong. But in general, for me, it's just been coming home to something that I've always felt inside. And again, I don't know. This could be, like I said, it could be incredibly temporary. I have no idea. I have no way to know. I'm always changing and growing and evolving and shifting and diving in new areas. And yeah, we'll see. Yeah, this was it for me. I had this relationship and I lost it. And getting it back feels very healing and full circle for me because I'm not just convincing myself. That's why I think I get so into the academic side. I'm finding evidence of the things I believed before I knew I was allowed to believe them, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Emma says, I was raised Catholic, but I was so curious during the readings and homilies. Homilies are like the sermons in Catholic church or mass, right? I was so curious that my mother eventually stopped taking me because I wouldn't shut up. I don't necessarily believe now, but I get it. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this and that nobody is feeling, I didn't want any of this to feel like preachy. Like, it's not how I roll. And I don't think there's any such thing as like I think we're all on the path. Like, I think we're all on the same path. We're just walking at slightly different parts, getting to the same end place. Have you gotten a better connection with Mother Mary or Mary and Magdalene? Who are you bonding to most on this path at this current time? I would say Jesus is probably my mainstay, which I did not expect to say like at all. But I think it's because that was my foundational relationship way back when and felt accessible to me. And it probably helps that I've been like watching The Chosen and stuff. But in honesty, right now, I would say it's just I guess it's just like it reawakened the faiths that I held before. And so I would say that's the relationship right now. Kind of. I would say God / Jesus, I guess. Kind of a little bit of both. And having the divine feminine in there as part of when I say God, I mean both the divine masculine and the divine feminine in either holistically or sort of separate, but still combined. That's why I think it's kind of like helpful for me to visualize it kind of yin yang like, because like I feel like both energies are present. They're also part of the same whole, but I can kind of like lean into one or the other depending on how I'm feeling. I guess I have not gotten as deep as I want to. I have been doing some work with Mother Mary, but because I'm still studying in the Old Testament, it's kind of hard to get in there. I'm doing a lot of side questing into New Testament stuff with, like I said, Jesus, Mary Magdalene. I think if I had to pick, I'd probably go Jesus. But I talked about this before with my members, my Badass Unicorns, actually, that for me, whenever I've ever had a spirit guide or any sort of like long-term relationship, it's always been sort of more masculine in feel. And that probably has a lot to do with like childhood mother wound stuff that will probably always be a little bit of a factor for me. I like having healed the divine feminine relationship, but it's always felt just a little safer with masculine, which is probably shocking for you guys to hear considering the story I told about my bio dad. But believe it or not, my mom was way worse, just in different ways. Thank you, A. That actually means a lot to me. Thank you. One of the reasons I was passionate about wanting to kind of pull the curtain back, I guess, on this is because, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't think anybody's really talking about this, especially nowadays, without it being either like all into the dogma and drinking the Kool-Aid or all the way over on the other side where it's like super bad and don't talk about it. And I think there's a space between, and I'd like to not be afraid to be in that space and have it be okay. Hilda says, thank you for sharing your journey. I've been yearning to integrate some of my former spiritual loves. You're welcome. A moving moment that has really touched my heart and made me feel loved and healed. I've had several of those, but I would say mostly realizing this is going to sound probably really silly, but like working with the tarot for myself when I do readings for myself has always felt like I'm in communication with, I don't know, higher self or spirit guide, like however you want to see it, right? That's felt very validating lately. It feels like I know now that I'm in communication with a greater power. And what I feel like when I'm getting messages, I'm truly being heard and in conversation with the divine. It feels like that more now than it ever has, I think. But also it always has. I just wasn't recognizing it, I guess. I don't know how else to say that. It feels, this is why I wanted to be very clear that tarot is not being pushed out of this. There's nothing I've read yet that has made me feel like anything in the Bible says that the way that you, me, we work with tarot would be bad. There's nothing in there that would make me feel like that. Nothing, not one thing. Even some of the passages you might immediately think and go, there's so much divination in the Bible. Holy shit. Did you know the ephod the priests wore? Crystals. Specific crystals named in the Bible. There's 12 of them. I have them listed off to the side and highlighted because I was like, excuse me? But all the Christians say that the crystals are bad. They're in there. The priests would wear they would carry two little, we think they're stones. I think is not scholars think they're stones, I think. Maybe like a black stone and a white stone, called the Urim and Thummim, I believe is how they're pronounced. And they were used for decision making, for spiritual decision making by the priests. Casting lots is throughout the entire Bible. Divination is well and throughout. There's prophetic dreams. There is all kinds of stuff. And so I think if anything, doing this study for myself from a deconstruction, reconstruction perspective has actually validated my divination practice as something that is beautiful and powerful and has always been a spiritual gift that I think we're given, whatever. I'm starting to sound really weird and I don't mean to sound weird. I just feel like it's all there. Like I'm just getting so much validation from anything. I could point to so many different moments where I felt really like seen and held and safe. And for everything from like saying, hey, like in my journaling practice or prayer practice or whatever, saying like, I really need to work on this. And like next week I get like a really intense lesson about that thing. And I'm like, gee, thanks. I didn't know that's how it was going to come down, but like, cool. It's exactly the same as getting called out by your tarot cards. It's the same thing. Let's see. I always appreciate all your share. Yeah, it's all the same path. I shared an Instagram by somebody named The Good Witch on Instagram that somebody shared with me earlier. Her Instagram account is A Good Witch Official, and she literally made a post yesterday. It's her most recent reel. If you go to her Instagram account, I shared it earlier in the chat. I'll just share it again. It's still up. I'll just share her account. But if you go to her most recent thing, she made a post that is like on point with what I'm trying to say about how everything's kind of all part of the same idea. Laurel says, one of the hardest parts of leaving my church was losing community, and I found it again through communities like this one. Have I found a community that combines Christianity and magic? I think that Sarah Rastreason is trying to create that. I have not found something that feels both Christian and like divination witchy specific, but I have certainly found some online things that I enjoy watching or checking out that feel non-dogmatic and very inclusive and accepting. I wouldn't say I've found community in this sense yet. I don't know that I ever entirely will, because one of the things I'm being so careful to not, it's actually kind of important to me that I maintain a very individualized, personal journey. I don't want to get scooped up into somebody else's idea of this all. And I'm concerned that if I like join a group or something, that it could be like that. So far, everything I explore in my own time, on my own terms, in my own home. So anything that I consume content-wise around this, I consume at home where I can journal it, pause, pull cards on it, like sit with it, skip parts. I give myself permission to make it mine. Miss Moonlight says the shadow version ties in Jungian iceberg and other stuff. I just started reading it. Oh, the shadow version of the Bible tarot. That's interesting. Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you, Artie. I'm so glad it's been helpful. Hi, Coven of Curiosity. Oh my gosh. I gotta get caught up in the chat. I'm so far behind. Okay. Yeah, agree. You can find them. You look. There's a church in California that does an online sermon. I watched them for a while. They were called Christ Church by the Sea, I think it's called. And the pastor there, I don't know if the pastor's gay. Maybe not. Don't quote me on that. But he seemed very inclusive and very progressive and welcoming. But typically I check things out. I see if anything feels right. And yeah, Lisa has heard me rage about some passages. Yeah, we have gone into it. It's been great. It's been great. Oppression. Oh, there you go. You guys got the right word. Occupation also Q. Yeah, that's another word. Amber says, popped in at the right time. Oh, thank God you weren't alarmed because you came in at the end of a very meaty chat. I popped in at the right time. Love me some melding of witchy pagan spiritualities with other spiritualities. We're all one. Oh, thank you. I love that so much. These passages that are hurtful are people trying to understand and explain God in their time and place. Yes. Okay. So now I'm getting caught up. Hey, Dawn, thanks for popping in again. She's like, hey, how's it going? You still talking? You still live? You okay, bro? I'm good. I'm good. Yes. Yes. Yeah, Jesus has a lot of great points, honestly. I find it really interesting when you start to really look at this stuff. My dog just like literally grabbed my butt. Come here, buddy. He's like, why are you still talking, Mom? I think when you don't extrapolate or listen to how other people interpret what's said, it goes a long way toward getting the point. But I think you really need to sit with it. And if you're going to do any of this, I think the most important, are you going to climb on my table? Okay. Is that what you're doing? Hi. Apparently Bruno's on my reading table now. So he's going to just hang out. He's going to just hang out with me. Let's see. Growing up Catholic, Mary is who I stay connected with over anything else. The divine feminine and dark mother vibes. Oh, we had so many amazing conversations around the dark mother in Genesis. There were so many juicy, yummy, great stuff about Bruno's like, stop waving your hands, pet me, about the dark feminine that shows up through the creation stories and through Genesis. It's actually pretty incredible. If you pay attention to references of waters and chaotic waters and dark waters and things like that in the Bible, I feel like that's really pointing to the dark feminine. And it's really powerful and cool. Let's see. Miss Moonlight, raised Catholic too in Boston, was just thinking about how beautiful my church was growing up. Yeah. Hi, Selenite's here. I may not be the big G, but I am definitely a little G. I am that I am. I love that. That's so beautiful. I love this stuff. Okay, so I've got a couple books on my to be read list about Mary Magdalene's potential bloodline. This comes about from, like, have you ever seen the Da Vinci Code? And I don't know how much of this is scholarly sound yet, but there is a book called, I think it's Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that I want to get. It's on my wish list, but y'all, I have so many books to read, as you can tell. So I'm trying not to like get it all right now, as tempting as it is, but it's on my list. Let me just see. There's a couple. So one of them is called, did I take it off my list? What's wrong with me? Lisa. Oh no, there it is. It was just, my list is so long, it was still loading. Where is it? I see you, buddy. Yeah, The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail by Henry Lincoln and Michael Bagent. That is one book I have that I was going to be looking at. Oh, I already got this one. I can take that off my list. That all shall be saved. There's a bunch of other books. There's another book by Margaret Baker called The Mother of the Lord, The Lady in the Temple, but it's like $182, so I'm not buying that. It's on my list in case it ever goes on sale, I guess. There's also, there's a book by Marcus J. Borg, which is really exciting to me, and I might read when I get into the New Testament letters, the epistles, because we all know that Paul comes off as like the most conservative, kind of like Puritan, whatever, but he had like weird sexual identity. Let's be real. This guy was like, don't anybody have sex ever. Like, he was like he had a particular view because he wasn't interested. He was not, anyways, that's a whole other side tangent. Regardless, Marcus J. Borg has a book called Paul, the First Paul, Reclaiming the Radical Visionary Behind the Church's Conservative Icon, which, given what I think of Marcus J. Borg's books so far, I think that would be really good when I get to the letters. So I may pick that up at some point. He's also got a book called Convictions, How I Learned What Matters Most, and Days of Awe and Wonder, How to Be a Christian in the 21st Century. I love his stuff. So I have both of those still on my list. And let me get back to questions. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm squirrel. Yeah, Danny's like, I stay away from the Jesus space. She calls it the cult of the sun. I totally respect it. I get it. Thanks, Trish. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really, really appreciate it. We've seen so much divination. Yeah, Danny and I did so much of this stuff together, especially in the first few books. And are you all right? Are you having a moment? Are you okay? What do you need? He's like, you have been on here far too long. Oh, the Jewish priest. I think it's called the ephod, the breastplate. Yes. I'm still getting caught up, guys. I'm sorry. Love how you put this emotion in this. Thank you. I have no idea what the heck to call myself. So I've talked about this earlier in the stream. I've used the word Christian because I want that word to mean more than we think it means. And I don't know, but I don't know if that's possible, to be honest. I have no idea. I think that I heard something really interesting. Where did I hear it? It might have even been something Peggy said. I can't remember. Or no, it was something I saw on a, I don't know. It was something basically about how the labels are about, or like religion is about identity. This is not my identity. My spiritual path is not my identity. I get that some people see that way, and that's okay. But I don't see it as my identity. So whatever word I use, I don't think it really even ultimately matters that much. There's a part of me that, like, I've heard terms like Christo-pagan and Christian witch and what's the other term you said? Neoplatonic. I don't know what that means. But I would like to think that the word Christian could mean a deconstructed, reconstructed version of it, and that would be okay. But the problem is in translation, because if I say that word, people are going to assume a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with what I believe. So that's challenging. So yeah, I don't know that it matters what I call myself, but what have I kept or kicked out? I haven't really kicked anything out. I guess, are you okay? I haven't really kicked anything out, but my witchy practice has shifted into something that is much less physical for the most part for a long time. So like I haven't done a lot of spell work for a long time. I did one specific spell. It's still hanging on my doorknob, that ball. I did that back when I first started UJT to kind of protect and overlook the whole project. I don't think there's anything wrong with like symbolic or folk magic-y type practices. So where they seem relevant, I'll probably still do those. Like whether it's a petition that I burn or sigil making or whatever. I think any way to communicate is valid. The Ash Wednesday thing was so witchy, and it was like basically writing down like an idea. I was just playing around with it. I was like, well, this seems kind of like a neat little ritual to do. And it was like writing something down and then burning a little paper. And like, I'm like, this is kind of cool. I like this. So I feel like there's a lot of harmonization with anything. I haven't felt anything that has to go, because that's not what it is for me. It's like I said, relationships at the heart of it. So the practice is the practice. And any practice that leads me to more space for personal growth, for being a better human, for like being a better wife or a better friend, or showing up in a more authentic way, I think all of those things are good practices. So yeah, I guess basically everything. Like I said, I've done a lot less, like I haven't done formal like Sabbath rituals in years and years. I've done little bits here or there. I haven't really built a proper altar in a long time. I have items that I keep out that represent different things for me all over my home. I talked about that a long time ago, that like instead of like a specific altar now, it's kind of like I just have little things everywhere that sort of represent something. And I don't see that going anywhere. But like, so there's not really anything that I could see needs to change, I guess. So yeah, nothing as far as so there's nothing on that front that's really changed. Like I think the practices are still the practices. I love this. Oh, let's see. Oh, I love drum circles. Drum circles are amazing. That's so awesome. I used to have a pagan group that I was a part of that was based out of a UU church. It was amazing. Oh yeah, tons of differences between where Danny and I are for sure. Like I'd say for her, this was, I think, I don't want to speak for you, Danny. Obviously, feel free to speak for yourself. But my take on it from where I sat was that we both began this from more of a mythological curiosity kind of thing, and then I went all the way over here and started deep diving. And I don't think that was ever what it was initially for either of us. And then like I just started getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Oh, thanks, Aspasia. That means a lot. I know that he's amazing. He likes to show up in my chats. No, definitely not. If you just joined, please watch the first 20 minutes. In fact, I very specifically speak about that. But no, everything's exactly the same. Everything's exactly the same. I just wanted to be more open about my deep diving and side questing and what I've been doing and studying, and where my like, I guess my faith practice is, but like my stuff is all exactly the same. Don't believe in demons. And I think what Doreen Virtue did was bullshit. But I also think she was probably already that kind of thinker. Like there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I don't really think that way. But please do watch the first like 20 minutes of this live stream. And yeah, that's a definite no. I'm going to recap, actually. I have some closing notes just to make sure that if anybody tunes in for the end, they can hear my last kind of final thoughts on it. Upstage by Bruno. I know, right? Oh, thank you, Jenny, for jumping in. I appreciate that. That's exactly the thing I was worried people would think, but yeah, definitely not. Farthest thing from it. The best way I know how to express it is what Peggy and I talked about, which is if I was ever in an ultimatum situation, right, where I felt like this spiritual path, I have to choose it or tarot or it or like personal sovereignty or it or inclusion or it or whatever, it's the thing that will always go. It's the thing that will have to change. Are you for serious right now? He just climbed on my table again, and now he's laying and making direct eye contact. If that is not a message. So yeah, if ever pressed, tarot stays. My spiritual beliefs as they exist stay. And my path would change because I'm not going to let somebody else's idea of what my path should look like dictate or take away things that I know do good in the world. And tarot and my practice have always been forces of good in my life and in the world. So yeah, like that. Peggy says this whole place is just one big altar these days. That's what I was trying to say. Yes. Spirituality expands. Yeah. If it asks me to shrink, it's the thing that's wrong. You know what I mean? So yeah. That's how I see it. Exploring my spirituality is all I say. And frankly, it's part of why I love living in LA. Everything's acceptable. That's valid. Lisa, you did great. And, we're going to say it. Told you so. Nothing to be afraid of. I know. Thank you. I was very nervous about this, y'all. You will not believe how many people have reached out privately with either curiosity or interest or really wanting to know more. But like, just saying only if you're comfortable. Nobody pressured me. Nobody made me feel like I had to talk about it. But the thing is, I just realized that I'm so open that if I don't, it started to feel like I was like keeping secrets. And that felt weird because there's nothing for me to be ashamed of about this. And I think that my fear was that people would misunderstand or think I was going to Doreen Virtue on y'all. For real. He's like, do not look at the camera. Look only at me. You're literally sitting on my notes. I see you. Do you need a treat? I bet you if you go with Peggy, she'll get you a treat. Go get your treat. Go get it. Go get it. She'll get it. Go get her. I don't think it's going to work, y'all. $10 says he grabs my butt in a minute again. Yeah, there will be, I think you meant to say no, Doreen virtue signaling in this house. Yeah. I am letting him get away with it because it's so damn cute. We have had a day together. It's true. Oh, thank you, Hallow. That means a lot. It feels really good to talk about this and know that I'm not being misunderstood or that people aren't getting scared. Like, that feels really good. And again, obviously this entire stream and hearing about all my resources is 100% not going to be for everybody. But I hope people checked out the beginning or the end. But yeah, okay. Let me do my recap notes so I can get off of here because I think Bruno might want to go, to the OUTSIDE. So let me give you my recap notes, especially if you're just jumping in at the end. So number 1, I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. This is ever evolving and malleable, not fixed. I am very much still charting my course. So keep in mind, I am in process. This is something that just started last summer. And so it is new for me and yet also not. And it is something that feels so soul nourishing and so good because of the deconstruction and reconstruction. Have a good shower, Danny. The main purpose of this live stream was to add context to any past or future references I might make to the Bible or God or Mary or Jesus or anything. So y'all don't think I've gone down the woo-woo rabbit hole and I'm going to Doreen Virtue on you tomorrow. Trust me, it will not happen. None of the people close to me in my life would ever let that happen. Do you know how quick Danny or Dawn would be on a plane if I started pulling some shit like that? Or how quick? Well, they wouldn't get to because Peggy would get there way first. But like, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to lose myself in this. That is not how I'm built. The only reason this was safe for me to even begin to explore now is because I'm 30 years into being solid about what I believe and why I believe it. And so having that solid foundation underneath me for what my spiritual beliefs as a whole are made it very easy for me to do this and feel safe. And I was still like, I took the teeniest, tiniest baby steps initially and like told people in my life that I was doing it so that they could keep me accountable if I started to sound like weird. Cause I was worried. I was like, what if I turn into Doreen Virtue? Like, I don't want to turn into Doreen Virtue. But like, truthfully, I did. I talked to Danny, I talked to Dawn, I talked to Peggy, and I was like, hey, please, this is where I'm at. This is what I think I'm doing. It feels good, but like, also I don't want to lose myself. So like, remind me if I seem to get a little lost. But so far that hasn't been a thing. And I don't think it will ever be a thing. I'm not concerned about it. And again, I'm 30 years into knowing what I believe, and that's not going to change. If I make any more content on this subject, I'm going to try to indicate that in the title or the description of the video, or in the video intro at least, so that I don't, the hesitation about putting anything specific in the title or description is I don't want to attract a whole slew of evangelicals to come and like attack me or any of you in the comments. So I might keep the title somewhat subtle, but I will definitely make sure to mention it in the first few minutes of the video, so that anybody who wants to avoid this topic totally can. I have no plans right now. I know several of you mentioned a series, and that's very exciting, but like, I don't know how much I really want to do that. Like for me, at the end of the day, this actually is a very personal journey for me. And there's a lot of vulnerability in talking about it this much, because I'm really putting my beliefs and my path on display. And I don't know that that's ultimately how ever how I've been. I've always been somewhat more private with that, but I don't want to pretend I'm not doing something I'm not doing, or reading something I'm not reading, or into something I'm not into, or whatever. And so I wanted to be transparent about it. But anyways, bottom line, if I do make any content around this topic, and maybe there will be like books I'm reading lately, it's going to come up in small ways. It'll come up in like what I'm buying as decks. It'll come up as what books I'm reading, that kind of stuff, right? But as far as any dedicated content, if I do that, I will put something in the intro so that those of you who would rather avoid this subject because it's just uncomfortable, or you don't feel it's not your thing, you can avoid it. Okay. So that is my commitment. If I forget, I am completely fine with somebody sending me a private message and saying, hey, Lisa, you forgot to say anything in the intro about this. And then I will update the description or do what I got to do to make sure you know. So if you're concerned that this is going to flavor my content in any way, that's what I will say that I will try to remember to do for you to make sure that you guys get to stay comfortable and don't get exposed to stuff you don't want to get exposed to. The main thing I wanted to remind you all of is that all of this has taken me deeper into my existing spiritual and tarot practices. It hasn't pushed them away from me at all. And if anything, it, like, again, much deeper than it was before, not less. So nothing in that way feels under threat or feels like it could change or shift. So tarot's not going anywhere. My content's basically the same. I just felt like this was like an elephant in the room that I wanted to like chat about. And finally, no matter what I believe or do in my spiritual path, this space, I call it my sandbox, because listen, it's my rules here, my way goes. It's like a little mini dictatorship. Okay, that's how it has to be if you're gonna have a YouTube channel. Otherwise, you will go nuts trying to like make everybody around you happy. But as much as I say it's my sandbox and I do what I want here, and that's true, this is my space first. I get that. As much as I say that, this space will always be inclusive and welcoming, period. We do not have to all believe the same things. We don't have to agree on all the same things. We don't have to have all of the same values. I'm good with that. I think that that kind of diversity is what makes us whole and healthy communities. It is also why I don't allow certain topics to be discussed in my spaces, because I think that it's too easy for those things to create division, and we stop seeing each other as people and we start seeing each other for values that may or may not be in alignment. And it's hard to have those conversations in these spaces. I also have, as Peggy and I have always talked about, we like to keep our spaces a refuge from that stuff, because it's too easy for all of us to never get a break from that stuff. And sometimes we do need a breather. We need a place where we can just let our hair down, put on our comfy jammies, and hang out, and not worry that a conversation is going to devolve or there's going to be a dog pile somewhere. So we keep those divisive topics off the table. So that's never going to change, but this space will always be inclusive and welcoming. And while I'm never going to pretend I'm perfect at that, because I don't think anybody can be, I will always do my best. And that will never change no matter what I spiritual name you want to give to whatever I'm reading or studying in my spare time. But there's not a single deck that's come into my collection that I have felt the need to move out because of this, or anything. I've brought more in, as is on brand for me. But yeah, anyways, so that's my recap. And if you saw this partway in and you or jumped in the middle of it, or you saw the end, the first 20-30 minutes are going to be really important, because that is where I brought notes. Like, that's literally where I outlined my history with religion. I talked about like disclaimers, and I acknowledged the harm done by people using this stuff to hurt people. I recognize that's a thing. I, acknowledged all of that kind of thing, and talked about how I got started on this, what my deconstruction and reconstruction journey looks like, what it's about for me, what things I do and don't kind of believe, basically. So, I mean, we got into it, But thank you so much for hanging out with me. This has been a lot of fun, which I didn't expect to say. I was really nervous about this. But it's actually been a lot of fun. It was fun to share all my resources. I now have a alarmingly big pile of stuff I'm going to have to put away, and I don't want to. And I'm going to make Peggy take me to dinner. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you so much, Robin and Artie and Jenny and Michelle and everybody. And thank you to those of you who reached out privately and gave me encouragement or told me that this was fine and it was going to be okay. And for all of the acceptance and love, as always. You have no idea how grateful I am for this community. This community is my safe space. And it's, yeah, as Erignon said, it is incredibly rare. And you all just have no idea how special it is. You have no idea how special it is. It's really special. So this isn't a surprise that everybody was so kind, but it is something I'm intensely grateful for. So yeah, bottom line, if you have, and just to say this at the very end, if you have a feel about this, that's normal. That's valid. That's okay. You're allowed to have a feel about it. I have no hard feelings against anybody who's like, I don't want to listen to this shit. That's totally fine. I was there like a year and a half ago. So totally get it. But if you do have questions, or if you didn't feel comfortable talking in the chat and you want to check in, or you're like not clear about where I'm headed, or you want to clarify anything, feel free always to send me a DM or an email. I might not get to it right away, especially with all the projects. Sometimes emails get a little buried. And just in case anybody needs like that extra bit of reassurance, like my next tarot project is called Convocation of Witches Tarot. If you needed reassurance that nothing has changed my path in a significant way, I hope that would be it. But anyways, thank you all so much. I love you all. And I'm going to end this freaking thing now, but thanks for hanging out with me. We are going to have another public live stream in a few weeks. So I'm bringing back Troubleshooting the Tarot. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be really fun. We're doing that in April. And I'm going to try to get on here about once a month at least for a public live stream for everybody, because I have been missing it and we haven't done it enough. So keep an eye out for that too. And thank you all so much. I love you all, and we will see you in the next one.